Hey pretty peoples, it's Midnight Swan here. Today I am here with What If Bella Swan was the queen of the Volturi kings. This going to be a whole series. I'm excited for this fiction to serve you. Let's get started. Marcus sat, as he had done for centuries. To all who watched him he appeared bored, disinterested and thoroughly depressed. He seldom spoke, and when he did his tone was dull and flat. Never for a second seeming to invite conversation or inspire even a modicum of excitement. His brothers knew differently. Marcus was an integral part of the Vulturi triumvirate. His ability to see and interpret the type and strength of bonds set before him was instrumental in mediating and judging the vampire world. Order needed to be maintained and Vulturi had been successful doing so for 1,000 years. Marcus himself was over 3,000 years old. Born in ancient Greece before either of his vampire brothers, and turned just shy of his 20th year, he was wise, caring, and a romantic at heart. His personality did not carry the extremes of Eros or Keys's, so he often found himself tempering their arguments and arbitrating peace. To some it may have seemed a thankless repetition, but it was Marcus's strength, and he was happy. He had been blessed with soul brothers, and nothing could tear them apart. That was the secret few knew. Marcus, contrary to appearances, had not been bored for a millennium and a half. He had been fascinated. Arrow had been turned in his early 20s. As a human, and then a vampire. He was enthralled by all human life had to offer. While some others may have viewed their eternal existence as a curse, dragging on unceasingly, Arrow felt that his unlife had been one new experience followed by another. And they were all to be enjoyed. The changes to human thought and culture, religion, philosophy, science, art, music, gender roles, and family units, were something had amazed him throughout his long years. They were slow, small, fast, profound, and every degree in between. Changes to the human's way of life and thinking were constant. So different from the vampire way. And the technology, especially in the last several decades, it seemed as though there was not enough time to understand one technological marvel, even for his superior brain, before another was introduced to replace it. Arrow had made it his personal hobby to try each new offering, and so the residents of the castle had seen practically every commercially available invention since the reduction of the light bulb and the telephone in the late 1800s. Arrow's enthusiasm for all of this made him seem a bit manic. Usually he was charming and quick-witted. To vampires outside of his coven, he presented a sort of gleeful madness and had gained a reputation for being cunning and ruthless. It was said that he searched out talent and destroyed covens without mercy at the smallest infraction, just to collect their gifted members. But the truth was that all Arrow had done since taking over governance of the vampire world, and his excessively happy personality, was not a facade, and not without reason. Arrow was filled with hope and nervous anticipation. He and his brothers had been expecting their mate for 1,500 years, and had taken their world in hand to ensure peaceful coexistence with humans. Even if the humans weren't aware. Even if they regarded most humans as food. The brothers knew the day their mate had been born. For the last 18 years, they and an elite few of their most trusted guards had been searching for her. Although their efforts had been fruitless, Arrow felt like their long-awaited meeting was imminent. Few Keys had very many nice things to say about him. He was impatient, discourteous and had a quick and viciously cruel temper. He was the most easily provoked, the hardest to calm, and were it not for his brothers, Keys himself was certain he would have decimated half the vampire population by now. Those who knew him best knew other things about him. For Keys, like Marcus and Arrow, was more on the stern ill-tempered front he portrayed. The white-haired vampire king was a handsome man, turned in his early 30s, and an excellent strategist and battle leader. He was a patron of the arts, as well as an artist himself. Throughout the centuries, many a painter, sculptor or musician had been funded by Keys, and the castle was full of original works that humans did not even realize existed. Keys spent a great deal of time in his own studio in the castle, and digging his hands into granite, marble or clay to produce something worthy went a long way toward relieving his foul moods. Nothing could fully soothe the frustration Keys had had to endure since being told of the mate he and his brothers shared. For 15 centuries Marcus had been able to see every nuance of their bond, every subtle change. And Arrow had been able to see it for himself with a simple touch of Marcus's skin. But Keys had not had that privilege. He would never be able to see for himself the absolute beauty that his brothers described to him. No matter how intricate the detail imparted, he knew he would never be able to reproduce its magnificence. He felt excluded, as though he did not know his mating bond as well as his brothers did. And that saddened and angered him. Marcus knew when he had first laid eyes upon Arrow, and then Keys, that they were meant to pass through existence together. He had turned them both within a few years of each other, understanding that the three of them were uniquely bonded. He had had a decade since his turning to discover and gain an understanding of his gift. But he hadn't seen a bond like theirs before. He, Arrow, and Keys were each linked with thick, glowing lines, he to Arrow and to Keys and they back to him and to each other. No bond line was more or less than the other. The whole bond was a study in perfect equality and meaningful synchronicity. The bond looked to Marcus to be nearly identical to the mating bonds he had seen. The bond was alive, bright, golden and shining. It flowed with purpose and passion, but the three vampires did not feel passion for each other, and that had confounded Marcus in the beginning. He knew immediately that his relationship with Arrow and Keys would be eternal, and nothing, short of final death, would separate them. But he didn't know why. Not having a more accurate description of their relationship, they began to refer to themselves as brothers. They had spent the first several centuries of their time together learning about each other, and indulging their animalistic natures. Most vampires of that me did not work especially hard to hide themselves. The largest and most feared coven in the vampire world made their home in Romania. The Dacian coven was sadistic, territorial, and under the impression they ruled the vampire world. Myth and superstition abounded, and there was no incentive to be circumspect. News and rumors traveled slowly, an entire village could be annihilated, the inhabitant devoured and the buildings and livestock set alight, with no one knowing for weeks. It was a time of feral excess, and terror added an extra sweetness to the blood. A few short years into their time, the brothers decided to take companions. They believed their bond was so intense that it would inhibit or even prevent them from ever finding mates. Keys had met Athenadora first, as the oldest turned out of the three. He had felt the need for a female presence in his life and in his bed before the others. Sulpicia and Didym had joined them soon after. Didym was Arrow's blood sister, who he had loved very much. He was excited to share his own life with her, and Marcus had found her attractive and very pleasant company. To be in a room with her was to be happy, a gift that Arrow didn't find particularly useful, but which made coven life quite harmonious. The three couples were entirely content with their arrangement. With their coven now quite large, the brothers decided to find a permanent dwelling place, and to sophisticate themselves above their most primal urges. Eventually, they settled in Volterra, Italy. Marcus himself had chosen the town and destroyed the vampires who claimed the territory. They settled within the main castle in the town, with the blessings of the thankful citizens. They found satisfaction in their somewhat civilized state. They realized they could live discreetly among the humans in Volterra, and began to call themselves Vulturi. The three couples began to take an interest in the species as more than just their food source. They began to understand that the current way of vampire life was not ideal. Eventually, humans would fight back, and it could end in catastrophe for both prey and predator. With that thought in mind, they began to plan. The leaders of the Dacian coven, Stefan and Vladimir, were 1,000 years older than the brothers, and maintained their superiority through sheer brute force and strength in numbers. They were not stupid, by any means, but they had grown complacent over their long period at the top of the food chain. The three brothers, along with their companions, decided to enlarge their coven and overthrow the Romanians. They knew that it would take many vampires to defeat the ancient coven, but they had the time, the will, and they knew that such a blatant challenge would be unexpected. During that time Marcus kept a casual eye on their bond. It did not appear absolute, as every soul bond should be. Rather, Marcus got a sense that it was evolving, but he could not fathom the outcome. Then, around 2,000 years ago, he had noticed the first real evidence of change in their bond. Each of the 6 lines connecting the brothers began to swell at its midpoint, like the branch of a tree awaiting the bud of life. The brothers were mystified and Marcus began to study the bond more closely. When the Vulturi felt sufficiently prepared, they went to war. For over 100 years they fought, with many vampires on both sides losing their immortal lives. And throughout that time, the bond continued to change, until, toward the end of the century, the buds broke, tightly furled, from the brothers' bond lines, each identical to the other. And Marcus knew, their bond would indeed prevent a mating bond from being created, as he had seen it created in so many other vampires. There would be no lines springing forth from him and his brothers and reaching for the line sprung forth from their mates. Instead, the mating bond for the brothers was already a part of the bond they shared. It originated within, and both nurtured their bond and was nourished by it. Marcus also knew that he and Arrow and Keys would share a mate, and that she was not yet born. His brothers and their companions were delighted. Sulpicia, Athenodora and Didymus had been nearly as interested in Marcus's sight as his brothers. While the three brothers had never thought that they would find mates, the possibility was always there for the sisters. And so there was no distress with the newest realization. Now, however, the brothers had a greater reason to ensure stability within their world. Their mate would not be born into chaos, fear and despair caused by the supernatural. They knew they could not control changes within the human world, and they had no idea when their mate would enter this world, but they would maintain order amongst the vampires of the world. With that added resolve, they began to actively search out humans they hoped would become gifted vampires. Arrow eventually found the twins, Jane and Alec, and when they returned, the tide of the war turned with them. The Romanian coven was utterly destroyed, the only survivors the two leaders. Centuries more passed. The Vulturi were the undisputed governors of vampires. Their rules were firm, and lawbreakers were swiftly dealt with. The number of gifted within their coven grew, and soon no one dared oppose them. The brothers were called masters and kings, and their desire for order within the vampire world was fulfilled. Bella collapsed in a heap on the wet, cold forest floor, her voice raw from screaming her heartbreak, her frigid body shaking with tears. She felt like she had just lost so much more than Edward and the Cullens, so much more than brothers, sisters, and caring parents. She felt as though something, some undefined cosmic stepping stone, had just been ripped away and she was teetering on the edge of her destiny, the obstacles in her path daunting. It left her feeling bewildered and empty and hopeless. She didn't know how long. She lay there before she was found and carried home. She only knew that the arms felt too hot, the gait was too uneven, and the pace too slow. All of this registered in the back of her mind, but just as quickly flitted out again in a wave of uncaring despair. She heard her father thanking someone in whispered tones. She heard Cullens and gone and tried not to hear any more. She was barely aware of the doctor checking her over and a nurse helping dry her off and put her into clean pajamas. Hot arms picked her up, and she felt herself being carried and deposited beneath warm blankets on her bed. That night Bella dreamed. She was happy, laying with Edward in their meadow. The wildflowers were in full bloom, swaying in the summer breeze. It was a bright, warm day, and Edward was casting prisms over the surrounding petals, enhancing the already dazzling array of colors. Her head was resting on his shoulder and he was holding her tattered copy of Romeo and Juliet, smiling slightly as she read aloud from it. Suddenly, book, man and meadow began to fade, disappearing like fog beneath a hot sun. The ground beneath her turned wet and cold, and when she looked around, she was standing on a glacier, surrounded by ice and snow. The brilliant sun reflected blindingly off of every surface, and Bella raised her hand to shield her eyes as she began to shiver violently. "Edward," she cried, "Edward, where are you?" Spinning around, she searched the landscape frantically, lips turning blue and teeth chattering. Her eyes passed over a shape in the distance and then returned to it almost immediately. "Edward, what happened? Wait for me." She stumbled toward him, tripping with lack of coordination. Her breath came in great, frenetic heaves, and her heart pounded wildly. The sun made the figure in the distance blur, and for a moment she saw not one, but three shapes. "I'm coming," she panicked. "Don't go." She ran and began to make out the silhouette of Edward's wild hair in the glaring light. She raced closer and vaguely sensed the presence of more shadows behind him. In that moment it became more important to reach them instead of Edward. She launched herself past Edward, but he reached out, caught her, and with a cruel, mocking laugh, thrust her to the ground away from him and her new purpose. She jumped to her feet, prepared to run once more, when the ground directly in front of her split wide open. An impassable crevasse separating Bella from the blurry figures and a still sneering Edward. "Poor little pet," he taunted. "Barely interesting enough to be a distraction. Stupid enough to believe a vampire could ever love you. Look at me, I am superior in every way." Even the temptation of your blood and silent mind faded to boredom. "What your soul seeks you will never find. You'll never be worth anything now." Bella sat straight up in bed, a scream ripping hoarsely from her tight, dry throat. She began to weep, just as Charlie threw open the door to her room and rushed in, gathering her in his arms and rocking her gently. "Quiet, Bella, hush now, you're home safe. You're going to be fine," he repeated over and over again, trying to calm her down. He barely heard her mumbled reply as she drifted back to sleep. I couldn't get to them. How will I meet them? I need them. Over the next couple of months, Bella's nights were often interrupted by the same dream. Lack of sleep turned her complexion gray with fatigue. Dark circles taking residence beneath her eyes. Her appetite left her and she lost weight she barely had to lose. Charlie wasn't sure how to handle her. He tried to be gentle when she awoke at night. But he was never sure if it helped. Often, he heard her crying out for someone, and he sensed it was not the Cullens. He tried to ask her who she needed to meet, but she seemed as lost as he. In desperation he asked Billy for advice. He had 2 daughters, after all, even if they had left home before they were 20 and rarely saw their father or brother. But Billy had been so distraught by his wife's death, that he admitted to barely being aware of his children's grief. At least you noticed, Charlie, he said, lingering traces of self-contempt lacing his tone. I couldn't see that Jacob and the girls were hurting as much as I was. By the time I started to come to terms with Sarah's death, Rachel and Rebecca had left, and Jake was here alone, taking care of his disabled old man. Jake doesn't blame you, Billy, Charlie began gruffly, and I'm not grieving like you were. There is no excuse for me to not notice. Billy only nodded his head, regret still marring his expression. How about I get Jacob to come over and see Bella tomorrow? They've always gotten along well, and he might be able to at least distract her, if not cheer her up a bit. And so they made a plan. And while the 2 of them went fishing, Jacob began the process of bringing Bella back to herself. Bella awoke 3 Saturdays later to fingers poking her ribs. She shifted, cocooning herself in her blanket and heard a low, chuffing laugh. Seconds later, cool air intruded around her ankles, and her foot was grasped firmly in one hand, while another mercilessly attacked her very ticklish soul. Damn it, Jake, what the hell? Bella uselessly tried to pull her foot away, kicking at the laughing young native with her free leg. You woke me up, you ass. And I had just gotten back to sleep. What are you doing here? Jake tried to look contrite, but his effort caused Bella to snort, roll her eyes at him and hit him with her pillow. Jake had been around a lot since their dads decided he needed to help her. That first day he hauled her out of her bed and threw her into the bathroom with an order to shower. Then he dragged her out to La Push and sat her on the ratty old love seat in his garage. With a bottle of water and a banana, he proceeded to work on his rabbit, all the while sending a steady stream of conversation her way. She was sure now that he could have continued talking with no input from her. But even in her dismal state that seemed rude. So without really paying attention to the words, she managed to find a rhythm of assorted noises that seemed appropriate. She didn't realize she had fallen asleep until she woke in a cold sweat 3 hours later. She was pale, sweaty and shaky, and very much felt like throwing up the banana and water she had somehow managed to consume. That was the first time she had told Jake about her dreams, although she left out Edward's exact comments, only saying that he had been cruel and hurtful. It helped. She didn't know why, but yeah. Kay's casual handling and cheerful dismissal of her seemingly fragile mind had slowly brought her back to awareness. She still didn't have much of an appetite, but she did keep some sort of food down each day. Still having that same nightmare, Bells? How many times did you wake up last night? Jake released her and grabbed her hand, drawing her to a seated position. His recent growth spurt, and the fact that she still had some weight to make up, had made it easy for him to tow her around. Charlie made some coffee before he left with Billy. It's still warm if you want some. Actually, I only woke up the once. But something is nagging at me. I feel like I should understand more than I do. I must be missing something, but I don't know what. It bugged me so much that I had a hard time getting back to sleep. I feel unsettled, uneasy. Plus I swear I heard wolves howling in the forest last night. Bella yawned and fell back on the bed, stretching long and hard. Cool, Jake said. About the wolves, I mean. Sucks about the sleep. Tell you what, I'll make you some toast and coffee to go while you get dressed. Quill is meeting me at my garage soon to help me work on the car, so we've got to get a move on. Bella agreed, and headed to the bathroom to get ready to face the day. 30 minutes later, she was munching cold toast, watching the forest through the passenger window of Jake's truck. As they crossed onto the reservation's boundaries, she caught a glimpse of something large and gray streaking through the trees. Jake, look, did you see that? Glancing out the window, Jake shook his head. Nope, what did you see? I'm not sure. Bella shrugged. I just thought I saw something. You probably did, Jake said, without much interest. There are a lot of animals in this area. Bella nodded and let it go. Excitement was fleeting for her these days. It just took too much energy. You said Quill was helping you today. Is Embry coming too? Jake's expression went dark. I haven't seen Embry in a couple weeks, he muttered angrily. Last week he was sick, but he spent this week hanging out with Sam fucking Yulie and his band of fucking merry men. Bella was shocked. Jake rarely swore, and she had never seen him this irate. His hands on the steering wheel were white-knuckled and he seemed to be shaking slightly. Geez, Jake, calm down. Who's Sam Yulie? Jake took one long, deep breath in through his nose. Sam fucking Yulie, Jake gritted. His teeth clenched, is the leader of a bunch of bullies and troublemakers. They seem to run the res. Even the elders think the sun shines out of Sam's ass. My dad is always like, you should give Sam a chance, Jacob. One day he might be there to help when you need him. But last time I saw Embry he looked afraid, and Sam wouldn't even let him talk to me. Called him back like he was a damned dog. And Embry obeyed like one, too. I swear, if he had one, his tail would have been tucked between his legs. Bullies, Bella repeated. Who did they gang up on? Jake grimaced and then shook his head. After his rant, he finally looked calmer. Reluctantly he amended his declaration. They haven't ganged up on anyone that I can see. I heard they ran off a drug dealer they caught around the school grounds. He pulled up to his house, turned off the truck, and they both got out, heading to the garage. But why would Embry be scared? He's just as big as the rest of them. I swear he grew 6 inches in the last couple weeks. Huh. She stopped and cocked her head, eyeing him consideringly. He had grown quickly in the last couple weeks also. She noticed he was a lot more muscular now. She would have had to have been dead not to notice when he took off his shirt one afternoon, complaining about being hot. Hot. She reached out and took his hand. Yeah, she thought, when he held her foot this morning. It had felt as though he'd just taken his hands away from a fire. His skin was toasty, but he wasn't flushed, his eyes weren't glazed and feverish, and he didn't look sick. Embry obeying when Sam ordered him about. Wolves howling in the night. Gray streaks in the forest, running faster than the car. Something shifted in her mind, and she remembered a day near the driftwood on First Beach. She remembered the story that had led her to discover the Cullen's secret. No way. Holy shit. Jake quirked an eyebrow at her and she flushed, realizing she had been staring. Sorry, she mumbled. I was thinking about something. Totally spaced out. She tried to remove her hand from his, but he held on. His eyes lit mischievously and he grinned. You can touch, too, if you like looking that much. He placed her hand on his chest, and drew her toward him. His other hand went to his waist and he held her there. With an exasperated huff, Bella tried to refocus on her recent musings. Jake, cut that out. I was not looking at you. Blood rushed to her cheeks again. Well, I was, but not for the reason you think. She paused. Jake let go of her with an amused chuckle. Just playing around, Bells. So if you weren't awestruck by all my manliness, what has you staring so hard? Bella clucked and then frowned. Jake, the guys in Sam's gang, have they always been big, or did they grow really fast, like Embry? Scowling, Jake grumbled, you were thinking about Sam's gang. Great, just forget them, Bella. Jake, I'm serious. Think for a minute. I have an idea about something and I just need you to answer my questions. Fine, Jake threw his hands up. I never paid much attention to Sam before, but yeah, Jared and Paul both shot up and filled out fast. You should have seen the girls at school trying to get their attention. He laughed a little. Did they start hanging out with Sam before, or after they grew? Do you remember if they missed school a week or two before? Maybe out sick like Embry. That was months ago, Bella. Give me a second. Jacob's brow knit in thought. Just then Quill came into the yard, whistling. Jake, my man, ready to get working. Hey Bella. Bella's eyes widened as she saw that Quill, too, had grown quite a bit recently. Hey Quill, she greeted. Quill, hey, do you remember if Jared or Paul missed school a week or so before they started following Sam around? Quill shrugged. I don't know why you care. Jake, but yeah, I think they both did. It was a few weeks apart, though. Jared first, then Paul. I remember my grandfather going to see them while they sick. He seemed excited about it. Seemed weird to me. Why? Bella's mind raced and her heart pounded. You guys know the tribal legend? The one you told me on the beach, Jake. About the cold ones and the spirit wolves. Yeah, they both stated. Hesitantly, Jake went on. Why, Bella? Well, I think you guys, Sam and them, and you and Quill, are wolves. Funny, Bella, Jake snorted. Nice to see your sense of humor starting to come back. Let's get going on this rabbit. He turned to go inside. Quill, on the other hand, looked at Bella speculatively. She looked entirely serious, and his grandfather had always set great store by the tribal legends. Quill always thought it was because the elder was the tribe's shaman and story keeper, but now. Bella, he queried softly, as Jake turned back to look at them. Why do you think that? Bella took a deep breath and swallowed hard. She wasn't supposed to tell people, but if she was right about this, then Jake and Quill would find out soon anyway. And she was certain she was right. Because. She swallowed again. Because the Cullens are vampires. Jacob stormed into his house, vibrating with fury. Bella had spent several hours telling Jacob and Quill the full truth about the Cullens. He just couldn't understand what they had done to Bella and why. Was it all some sick game, used to alleviate the boredom of eternal undeath? They seemed to enjoy living a human facade, choosing to feed on animal rather than human blood. Yeah, except if they smell someone exceptionally tasty, and when one of them slips, they just up and move. Jake snorted in disgust, remembering. Gee, how Bella had relayed that tidbit matter-of-factly. They had drawn her in, and done a piss-poor job of caring for her. She thought she had fit with the so-called family, that they had loved her. But, just from listening he understood that she was a doll, a pet. The tiny female, Alice, chose Bella's clothes, disregarding Bella's personal style. She was primped and painted while she sat placidly, as Edward liked her to be. She was barely tolerated by the supermodel and used as entertainment and a constant target of teasing by the big one. He and Quill had been shaking and hot with anger. When she told them about James and Phoenix, showing them her scar, they had both broken out in sweats, growling and groaning. He felt as though his skin was about to split apart. It was painful and frightening, and that only served to fuel his rage. He would never understand why a group of 7 vampires ran, instead of confronting James and the other 2. If they had destroyed him in Phoenix, after he had nearly killed Bella, then why couldn't they have done it here, when they realized he was a danger? Maybe it was a good thing the leech had leapt at her on her birthday. At least it had got them all to leave her alone. Sure, she was sad. But he was helping her get better every day. She would survive. After she had finished her story, Quill ran off to confront his grandfather. Easygoing Quill was livid. That was when Bella had told Jacob the details of her dream that she had left out before. Her flat recitation of Edward's remarks confirmed what Jake had been thinking. She had been a pet, and intuitively she knew that. What disturbed Jake more, though, was that last sentence, "What your soul seeks you will never find." If the dream was Bella's subconscious shining a light on her life, then what did that mean? And who was she trying to reach? What had been bothering Bella for weeks was now bothering Jake as well. At the moment, however, he was much too focused on having it out with his dad to spend a lot of time thinking about Bella's problem. Bella barely managed to dart inside the black house before Jake slammed the door with a resounding crack. She winced at the sound, but said nothing. Instead, she went to sit on the couch. The day's events had robbed her of her energy. She hadn't eaten since the toast Jake made for her, but her stomach was in knots, and she was just not hungry. "Dad," the angry teen roared, "I know you're home, I saw Charlie pulling away. Where the hell are you? Come out here, old man." Billy wheeled into the living room, looking at Jake worriedly. "Jake, what's going on? Calm down, son, and talk to me." "Calm down," Jake sneered. "Why, afraid I'll turn into a wolf or something?" Billy paled, glancing quickly at the couch, where Bella was sitting listlessly watching the confrontation. "I am not sure what you mean, son," he hedged. "Cut the bullshit. You're going to lie to my face and tell me that Sam and the rest aren't spirit wolves. You're going to try to tell me that the legends aren't true. And the Cullens aren't vampires. Admit it, Dad," Jake ordered, his body shaking faster than ever. His face grim, Billy demanded, "Go outside, Jacob. Right now." He followed Jake to the door as the boy stomped out. "I'm going to call Sam." "No need, Billy," a new voice interrupted. "I'm here. I figured you'd need me. Quill just phased a few minutes ago. It seems someone gave these 2 a heads up." His narrowed gaze cut to the doorway, where Bella was leaning on the doorframe, looking pale and sickly. Seeing and hearing Sam, the object of his growing fury, Jake charged. "You," he snarled. His body exploded in an instant, paws replacing hands and feet, and hair spouting all over his body. Sam realized what would happen and phased quickly. By the time he crashed into Sam, Jake had taken the form of a massive, chocolate-colored wolf. Billy breathed a sigh of relief, thinking now that Sam would be able to reason with the new wolf, or use his alpha authority to control Jacob. But as he watched the two wolves continue to fight, his concern grew. He wondered if Jacob would even succumb to Sam's leadership, considering the mantle Sam held was rightfully the younger wolf's. After long minutes, Jake and Sam stopped fighting. They stood staring at each other for an extended period before Jake backed off a step, and lowered his body slightly. Sam bared his teeth, and Jake lowered a fraction more, averting his eyes to the ground for just a minute. It was not full submission, but it seemed to appease Sam's wolf for the moment. Jared, Paul, Embry, and a newly phase Quill slowly emerged from the trees in their wolf forms. They surrounded Jake, sniffing at him and butting their heads against his body. Jake turned to look at his dad and Bella, and then the sixth wall. Vase turned as one and disappeared into the forest. Bella made her way back into the house, laying back down on the couch and pulling a ragged throw over her shoulders. She felt wrung out and cold. She needed to go home, but didn't think she should be driving. The day had been fraught with emotional extremes. She didn't notice Billy entering the room, until a piece of fruit was tossed beside her, a glass of water was held in her eye line. She looked up at Billy, taking the water with a mumbled thanks. He scowled at her. "What do you think you were doing, Bella?" Jake needed to find out about his heritage himself. It's the way it's always been done, to protect the secret. What if he hadn't phased? Bella rolled her eyes. "Come off it, Billy. Do you really think he wouldn't? I didn't even know about the wolves and I figured it out in about an hour today. Only an idiot wouldn't see that he and Quill were going through the same things the others went through not long ago. Someone just needed to put it together. I know about vampires, I knew I was right about this." "You knew, too, don't deny it." Billy's face darkened. "Of course I knew. I've known it was a possibility since Sam came back and told the elders he had phased. Nearly a year ago, when Jake started growing I knew it was a matter of time. There is no denying it. But it is council business, not yours." He paused then. "How did you know about spirit wolves anyway? Even Charlie has never been told our legends, and he spends so much time here he's practically Quilute." Bella inhaled, then exhaled slowly. "Jake told me, months ago. Before I started seeing Edward. It's how I figured out the Cullens were vampires. I took the legend and the things I had noticed about them, did a bit of research online, and put two and two together. It was easier to figure out the wolves, though. I already knew that vampires were real. But Billy," she continued firmly, "my business or not, Jake is my best friend, and has done so much for me in the last few weeks. I could not have kept this from him. What kind of a friend would I have been then? I didn't tell him about vampires until I realized he would know soon anyway. It wouldn't have been safe for him, or fair. How fair is it for his own father to keep this large of a secret? One that directly and profoundly affects him. He is more angry about that, I think, than about turning into a wolf in the first place." Billy only looked at her appraising Ly. He gestured to the apple with his chin. "Eat that," he grunted. "You obviously need it. If you want to stay tonight, you can sleep in Jake's bed. I doubt he'll be back tonight. Call Charlie. Or you can take the truck, you know where the keys are." With that he left the room. Blank. It was late the next morning before Bella saw Jake again. She had taken Jake's truck, figuring Billy didn't need to wake up to her screaming in the night. At least Charlie was used to it. She had awakened repeatedly last night, her dreams strange, disjointed, and interspersed with images of the wolves. Her nightmare was changing, and she just couldn't help the hollow feeling it gave her. Yet she also began to feel a glimmer of hope. She was happy to see Jake when he arrived. "Hey, how was wolfing out?" she asked, when he came in the back door, wearing a ragged pair of denim shorts and nothing else. "Oh, Jake, your hair. You cut it. That's going to take some getting used to." Jake laughed, long and loud. "Only you, Bella," he started, in between chuckles, "would take me shifting into a wolf without blinking an eye, but need time to get used to my short hair. Long hair sucks when you're a wolf. Quill's mom just cut it for me." "How's Quill?" He was pretty upset. She sat down on the love seat, and when Jake sat she put her feet in his lap. "He's okay, actually. You know how laid back he is. He blew up at old Quill, phased, and thought being a wolf was totally cool. Plus, he's glad to be able to hang with Embry again. We both are." Bella searched his eyes. "And how about you, Jake? Do you think being a wolf is totally cool?" "It is pretty neat, Actually, Jake replied with enthusiasm. Hey, did you know that I'm supposed to be alpha of the pack? The big dog, head honcho, Jake the Wolf King. Apparently it's in my blood. He grinned and snorted out a breath in amusement. Really? Bella wasn't sure what to say to that. She cool. Detail that Jake didn't take himself seriously, but if it was his birthright then maybe he had no choice. How do you feel about that? Jake shrugged and a small frown creased his forehead. He looked troubled for a moment. I don't know, Bells. I was so mad at Sam, until he showed me what he had to go through when he first phased. Did you know that he ran around as a wolf for a couple of weeks? He didn't know what had happened or how to get back to human. He finally phased back in his sleep. At least the others have someone to look to for guidance. And he does a good job. He's earned the spot, you know. I just don't like that he can take away our free will with an alpha order. I wonder if he keeps a tighter grip on things because he knows the position isn't his by rights. Although he seems to have a difficult time with me. It's like I can argue with him if I feel strongly enough about things. He was pretty pissed at you. Wanted me to stay away, but that's not going to happen. A hot hand patted her leg. Even so, I don't want his role. At least, not yet. It's stupid to expect me to take over with no idea what I'm doing. So I'm good with Sam for now. Well, that's good, I suppose, Bella muttered. Not entirely happy that Sam blamed her. She truly believed the secret was carried too far. You had a right to know. I agree, Bells. My dad even apologized for not telling me. He told me you and he talked. He feels a bit ashamed. I think, but I don't think it will change anything, will the council? And since you're not tribe, they can't do anything to you. What about you, Jake? After all, you told me the legend. Sam already chewed my ear off about that. But I didn't know any better, really. I thought they were just stories. The council can't overrule his decisions. His pack, his choice. He's making me run extra patrols. At Bella's quizzical look, he clarified, you know, for vampires. The Cullens were the only ones allowed around here, and not on our lands. All the others get to be the accelerant at their own personal barbecue. Bella shuddered. I remember when they killed James, just before I passed out. I may have been out of my mind with pain, but I'll never forget the sound of a vampire being torn to pieces. She rubbed her scarred wrist. Knowing that she was reliving bad memories, Jake turned the conversation. How'd you sleep last night, with everything yesterday, Bells? Oh, she sighed, I dreamed all night. Jake, wolves, and the Cullens, and Edward, and legends. All of it. None of it woke me up, though, until I had my nightmare. It's changing. The feel, the mood of it is changing. Whoever they are, those three, they're looking for me, Jake. They have been for a long time. I can sense it. I dream it. I am no longer the only one running in my dream, in my nightmare. They are coming to me. I can tell how desperate they are to reach me, but I can never see them clearly. They seem important to me. Why is that? How will I ever find them if I don't know who they are? Bella chewed on her lip, wringing her hands. Damn, Bella, that's tough. I don't know what to say. Jake paused, looking startled and then thoughtful. There is another legend I think you should hear. Look, I have to go. But I have an idea about something. Sam says there is a bonfire next Saturday. We'll sit around and have something to eat, and then Dad and Old Quill will start the storytelling. You can come. Dad said you could, and Sam couldn't say no. Yeah, sure. I mean, the pack all probably hates me anyway. The girl who hangs with vampires. They may as well get to know me, so they have a better idea who to loathe. Nah, Bella, they may mock you a bit, and it seems Paul is always angry, but they are good guys. They won't hate you if they get to know you. Plus, Quill, Embry and I are half the pack, and we all still like you. At that, Bella had no choice but to agree as she tossed Jake his truck keys. Blank, blank. Bella slowed her truck in front of the Cullen mansion. It had been nearly 3 months since they had left. In fact, Bella realized with a start that Christmas was just a couple weeks away. The grounds showed the barrenness of winter, drab amid the surrounding evergreens. Telling Jake and Quill all about the Cullens yesterday had made her realize that their leaving still didn't feel real to her, like the action was incomplete. She decided to take one last trip to the Cullen mansion. It would be her catharsis. She entered the house and found graceful abandonment. The furniture was not gone, but was instead sheeted against the dust. All the pretty little decorations were missing. But some of the larger artwork remained. The tribute to graduations past was leaning against one wall, away from the windows. The tassel on each cap was wrapped in tissue paper. And the whole thing was wrapped in plastic. Carlisle's cross was gone, but the table where they had always held family meetings was still there. It seemed they had only taken things with personal significance. Edward's piano was gone. Room by room, she wandered through the house. She felt a slight ache when she remembered believing she was happy and wanted here, but it was not an overwhelming grief. As she was leaving Carlisle's office, her gaze strayed to a spot on the wall where a painting once hung, and an odd longing confused her. She remembered when Carlisle had told her about his time with the Vulturi. They had settled in Volterra, Italy, centuries before. Marcus, he pointed to the brown-haired young-looking vampire, is considered a saint there, for driving all vampires out of the city. They even have a holiday named after him. Street, Marcus Day. Some of the guard told me he had lost his mate, Didymus, many years before I met him. He always seemed distant and depressed. Even though I was there for some years, I rarely saw him smile. It was as though he was existing in a dream state. Arrow, on the other hand, he said, gesturing to the dark-haired one in the middle, was charming, eloquent, and gregarious. But ruthless in his quest for power. The guard already had several gifted members when I met them, and he was always looking for more. I hate to think of the methods he used. I believe one of the guard has the ability to manipulate bonds to ensure loyalty. He shook his head disapprovingly. And the white-haired one? Bella asked curiously. That's Keys, and you. LL rarely meet a more cruel and bloodthirsty vampire. He's a brilliant tactician, but I think that's because he enjoys the ravages of war so much, Carlisle stated flatly. He's dangerous, unforgiving. He was nearly killed by werewolves once, and spent the next century hunting them to near extinction. They are human drinkers, and make no effort to be otherwise. They tried hard to make me change my diet when I was there. Eventually I could no longer tolerate their disdain for human life. That's when I came to America. Bella shook the memories away. For some reason, his recitation of the Vulturi did not seem nearly as frightening now as it had in that moment. She shrugged away her thoughts and finished her tour of the house quickly. The visit here had both helped and left her feeling perturbed. Bella parked her truck wearily and grabbed a sweater before jumping out. Down at the beach she could see the pile of wood stacked up ready to light. Reaching across the seat, she took out the container of cookies she had brought and slammed the door shut. She was really not sure that she wanted to be here, but Jake had insisted. They hadn't seen each other this week, thanks to the extra patrol. Sam had given Jake, but they had talked on the phone a couple of times. She had tried to get him to tell her why he was so eager for her to hear another legend, but he had refused to say. I want you to form your own impression, Bella. He stated, I'll tell you my theory after. School had let out yesterday for the winter break, and Bella had spent the morning wandering through the shops in Forks, finishing off the Christmas shopping she had started online after visiting the Cullen house. She knew Jake didn't patrol today, and had wanted to meet him before the bonfire, but when she called, Billy had told her that Jake was busy. So she baked cookies instead, figuring that she should contribute something tonight. Quill ran up to her as she started down to the beach. Hey there, Bella, let me help you with that. He snatched the cookies out of her hands and slung an arm across her shoulder. Oh if, she huffed. Quill, you dumbass, have you noticed you're like a foot taller than me? Not to mention a hell of a lot heavier. I have enough trouble walking on my own. I don't need you weighing me down. She swung out from under his arm and glared at him before giving him a playful push. Of course, he didn't move an inch. Sorry, itty-bitty Bella, he laughed. Let's get down to the beach. They're about to light the fire. Jake wants me to save him a spot. With an irritated frown Bella asked, Jake's not here. Where is he? Oh yeah, you probably haven't heard. You know the Clearwaters, right? Your dad is good friends with Harry. Well, Seth and Leah both phased today. Got into an argument and nearly destroyed their living room. Good thing Harry was fishing with Billy and Charlie, otherwise he probably would have had a heart attack. And what's that got to do with Jake? Bella asked impatiently. Well, Seth phasing is okay. Even if he's only 14. Younger than anyone would like, but it's not a surprise. But Leah, well, there's never been a female wolf before. Freaked us all out a bit. And then there's the Sam thing. They used to be engaged, and then he wolfed out and now he's with Emily. He pointed to the back of a woman across the beach. Needless to say, he went on, Leah is being a totally bitter bitch to Sam. And she is taking full advantage of the pack mind to do it. Sam refuses to order her to stop. I think he feels guilty. So Jake offered to stay with her, show her what's what, and try to get her to phase back. I'm not sure he'll make it tonight. Bella began to grumble. Great. He badgered me all week about this legend he wanted me to listen to, and now he's not even here. How many legends did they tell? Which one did he want me to hear? Hey Embry, Quill grinned, sitting next to his friend, who returned the greeting. Don't worry, Bella, Jake told me what story it is. I'll make sure you don't miss it. Sit down, there's lots of room. Amused, Embry interjected with a teasing tone. There's enough room for 3 of Bella. Bella pinched his arm as she sat and settled in to listen to Billy and old Quill. Blank. And so, Taha Aki's great wolf returned to the forest, to forever mourn his soul's true mate. Old Quill's voice resonated with pride and sorrow as he drew the tale of the third wife to a close. Bella wiped tears from her eyes, sniffling a bit as she listened to Billy continue to explain imprinting to the new wolves. Jake and Leah had joined the group midway through the narratives, and Leah was now staring at Sam and Emily with a mixture of rage and heartache. Jake put his arm around Bella and rubbed her shoulder affectionately. Want to take a walk, Bells? He asked when the stories were done. The elders had left and the gathering was descending into teenage merriment. They wandered slowly down the beach. Bella was deep in thought and Jake knew it. He was silent, waiting for her to speak. I thought Edward was my soulmate, Jake. But he wasn't, was he? Taha Aki might still be in the forests mourning his wife. He didn't do that for the first 2. Only the third wife. Edward left me, and the way he did it was cruel. That's what you're thinking, what my dreams are telling me. That Edward and I aren't meant to be. I think I knew that already. I'm not longing for him, she trailed off. Jake was nodding his head. I'm not sure I would have believed in soulmates before, Bella. But the way you describe your dreams is so intense. And then finding out about spirit wolves and imprinting. It's almost beyond the realm of possibility. I have loved you since we were kids, Bells. But lately I've known that you and I will never be. Can never be. I just hope you find what your soul needs. Bella gasped, mouth dropping open and eyes widening incredulously. My dream. Soulmates. But Jake, there are 3. 3 soulmates. Is that what you're saying? That's what you're saying, isn't it? She barely waited while Jake nodded again. How can I have 3 soulmates? Why would I have 3? She stubbed her toe on a rock, swearing as she tripped. With a laugh, Jake steadied her. You can't walk down a beach without falling. You find a nest of vampires who think you smell really good, and you decide to spend all your time with them. You attracted a sadistic human drinker, who you ran to meet, and got badly beaten and bitten. And when all the bloodsuckers finally disappeared from your life, the first people you spend time with turn into giant wolves. If anyone needs more than one person loving and protecting them, it's you, he concluded. Bella opened her mouth incredulously, then shut it again. I hate it when you make so much sense while you are mocking me. Jake, what else is going on in that head of yours? You seem to have figured out everything I needed to know. Jake rubbed his clenched fist on his thigh. He took a deep breath, visibly steeling himself. I think your mates are vampires, Bella, he stated, as he fought desperately against the wolf inside him. I just can't see anything else making sense. They are in your dreams with Edward. And you said before that you were most upset when he left because it felt like the path in front of you was blocked. It makes sense that if you didn't feel that while you were with him, and he's not your mate, then somehow his coming into your life was destined. He brought you into a world you never knew existed. I'm part of this world, too, but you aren't dreaming about me, or Embry, or Paul, or any of us. Wolves don't figure into your nightmare at all. Plus, none of the wolves have imprinted on you. He took another breath. It's the only thing that makes sense. I hate it, but how can I block your destiny? I've seen the way you are now. Sleeping badly, always tired. You barely eat enough to sustain yourself, and you cut yourself off to everyone but me. You need them, Bella. Bella nodded hesitantly. Jake, she began, you do know that if you were right, the vampires in my dream are looking for me. And they are probably human drinkers. How am I supposed to be okay with that? Especially after knowing you and the pack. That's what you are here for, Jake. To kill vampires. Jake sensed his wolf listening closely, agreeing with what Bella was saying. Cautious of provoking a shift, he took a step backward and shook his head. No, Bella, that's not why we are spirit wolves. Old Quill told us about the cold ones attacking, and about the third wife tonight. But Taha he had already been a wolf for a long time before those vampires attacked our people. I'll tell you about Utlapa one day. He was a spirit warrior, in a time before the wolves, and he turned evil. That's when Taha Aki's spirit entered a wolf for the first time. Not because of vampires. I think we're wolves to guard against all dangers to our tribe from evil, not just to kill vampires. Jake felt his wolf cock his head consideringly. Before settling back down, Jake figured that maybe he didn't have it wrong, after all. I didn't know you were such a deep thinker, Jake, Bella said, trying to lighten the mood. What does Sam say about your point of view? Sam can't see what I don't want him to, Jake responded. Having a best friend who hangs with leeches has given me a unique perspective. I still don't like the idea of you being mated to red eyes, but I know you, Bells. You're not evil. As for the deep thinker thing, I think that came with the phase. It's hard to explain, but I feel like my wolf brought wisdom from my ancestors. And is willing to consider my experiences to grow into a better warrior. And you are definitely an experience. Maybe that's why Ephraim was willing to make a treaty with the Cullens in the first place. Bella mused. Could be. Never thought about that, but you're probably right. I will take over Alpha one day, Bells, and I hope the pack and the elders will respect and even listen to my viewpoint. Without me having to go all Alpha order on them. I hope they do, Jake. I would be sad to lose my best friend just because my mate is a vampire. Mates, Bella, plural, 3 of them, remember. Jake the wise wolf king says so, he grinned. And I don't want to lose you, either. Bella stopped dead still. Her face was white with shock, and Jake felt her heart stutter in her chest. Then she bloomed with color, and jumped up, yelling, Kings. 3. Jake. Oh Jake. You are awesome, amazing, the best. I know, Jake. I know who they are. She whirled in a circle, laughing, tears flowing down her cheeks. She hugged Jake hard, and held on, thanking him again and again. Jake held her for a moment, and when she stilled, he gently queried, Who are they, Bella? Are you sure? Vulturi, Jake, the 3 rulers of the vampire world. Arrow, Keys and Marcus. They call themselves brothers. Carlisle told me about them. But Jake, I'm not sure they are very nice. Carlisle said as much. Plus he said Marcus's mate died already. Bella's shoulders slumped dejectedly. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, Bells, maybe not. Carlisle could have been wrong, or they could have changed. I mean, Carlisle's family seems harmless. But you know firsthand that they can be selfish and cruel. Let's go back. I'll walk you to your truck. Go home. Sleep on it. Maybe your dream will change again. I'll come by tomorrow. It's my turn to patrol right now anyway. Seth and Leah are coming with me. When they reached her truck, he gave her a quick hug, with an admonishment not to worry too much, then he walked into the woods, shifted. And watched as her taillights disappeared in the darkness. 10 minutes later, his keen hearing picked up the sound of screeching tires and rending metal in the direction of Forks. He and the other wolves raced toward the scene. Seth, being closest, arrived first, with Leah fast on his heels. Jacob's long legs ate up the ground in huge bounds, and he watched the unfolding events through the pack mind. Horror invading his thoughts. Bella's truck lay on its side, the front end completely crumpled in. Bella was sprawled next to the hood, half in and half out of the truck. Her seat belt had snapped, and there was blood everywhere. She lay, conscious, but barely moving, as a red-haired vampire laughed and stalked closer. Hello, Bella, the female chimed in a childlike voice. It's so nice to see you again. James says hi, too. She paused, then bared her teeth. Oh, that's right, he can't say hi, because you killed him. The vampire's eyes turned black, and venom dry. PPED down her chin and flew from her mouth like spittle, as she yelled out, You and those damned pathetic animal killers took my mate. You are the reason he's dead. You, a worthless, spineless, sniveling human. I will make you pay. You will suffer. You and every single one of those unnatural vampires will die. With that, she leapt, not noticing the 2 wolves speeding toward her. Leah caught up with her mid-leap, and tackled her to the ground. The bloodsucker got her arms around the inexperienced wolf, and with a feral hiss, she squeezed. Leah yelped as she felt several ribs crack. The red-headed she-devil rolled Leah under her, kicking back at an approaching Seth as she moved. She continued squeezing and rolling, then she stood up and, in one swift move, launched Leah head-first into a large evergreen, where she phased human and lay unmoving. Jake ran up, yelling at Seth to take care of Bella, but the younger wolf was already charging the vampire. She ducked underneath the sandy-colored canine, reaching up and grabbing him by the throat. She closed her hand, fingernails digging into flesh beneath fur, causing Seth to whimper and choke. Without warning, another vampire barreled into Jake. His dreadlocks swung, and his red eyes gleamed menacingly. Victoria, He called, "You never told me we were playing with puppies tonight. I thought I was just keeping you company while we grabbed the girl. I wanted a taste of that mouth-watering blood before you spilled it all in anger." He started toward Bella, but was stopped by an angry chocolate wolf standing in the way, growling. "Laurent," the vampire called Victoria said. "You'll get a taste after I get the girl. I hear more of these mongrels coming." She held a human Seth by the throat. His face was red from lack of air and he was barely struggling. Beyond the female leech, Jake saw Leah beginning to stir, but she was too injured to fight further. Jake knew he had a choice to make between Seth and Bella. Seth might survive long enough for the pack to catch up to the vampires, but Bella certainly would not. Jake stood his ground, snarling. Victoria said something, too fast and low to make out. With a look of frustrated rage, she shook Seth and tossed him to Laurent. Laurent looked gleeful as he grabbed the boy, then he and Victoria turned and disappeared in different directions. The last thing Bella was aware of was Jake, gingerly picking her hair out of her eyes, whispering that the ambulance was coming. Blank. Any human seeing Marcus upon his throne would have thought him a statue. He was absolutely still, immersed in his bond sight, paying only the slightest attention to the various vampires he and his brothers were scheduled to see today. So far, there had been no need to shut off his gift and join his brothers in judgment. He would if he had to, but today he was especially engrossed, thinking over the last 18 years of their bond. He and his brothers would never forge that day they knew their mate was born. They had been in their study, where Arrow was trying and failing to interest his brothers in the upcoming release of Nintendo's game, Legend of Zelda. Keys was ready to strangle him. And Marcus had been half listening with amusement, the main focus of his mind, as always, on the bond he had been watching for so long. Without warning, the 6 golden lines of the bond flared. Marcus sat up suddenly, ignoring his brother's exclamations, and watched in awe as tiny vines began to grow from the base of each bud and entwine themselves around the bond. Around each line they wound, delicate, yet with unbreakable strength. More tendrils appeared, just as fragile-looking, and wrapped every pair of lines together, encircling the entire bond. What should have been a chaotic tangle instead looked to Marcus like an intricate weaving, a beautiful intermingling of their mate's soul finding theirs. He wasn't aware that Arrow had grabbed his hand until he heard him breathe with reverence, "She is born. Brothers, our mate has been born on this day." At this very moment, Keys was torn between excitement and irritation. He knew that his brothers would not leave him out of their sight. But he also knew he would have to wait until the bond change finished. He noted the time on the giant wall clock Arrow had insisted in putting in here. Then, with ill-concealed frustration, he tore open the door to the study. "Jane," he barked, "find out today's date, then gather your brother, Felix and Dimitri, and return here. Also, ask Athenadora and Sulpicia to come." With that he shut the door once more and returned to watching his brothers. "The bond, Keys. It's beautiful. I truly am sad that you cannot witness it for yourself. Vines, as delicate as you have seen, have grown from beneath the buds and wrapped us separately and together, in an eternal embrace. The emerging leaves are green, dark and glossy, and limned with shining gold as though our own bond lines are shining straight through the vines and leaves. There is no part of the bond that is left untouched by each of us. It is remarkable to behold." His voice and face held pure wonder. "I think it will continue to grow through her life, brothers," Marcus said, captivated by this long-awaited event. He had never dared to imagine what form their mate's inclusion into their bond would take. A quick knock on the door roused the three, and they looked up as Jane entered the room with the 5 other summoned vampires. "Masters," she greeted with a quick bow. "It is September 13, 1987. We have come as you ordered. Arrow, Keys, Marcus. What is happening?" Sulpicia was curious and concerned. It was rare for the brothers to be this agitated. "She is born," Arrow exclaimed. "We have just witnessed the first change to our bond in more than a millennium. We must celebrate. Let's go to Paris and hunt. I've always been partial to French food. I've always thought it tasted a bit like red wine." "Oh, this is marvelous news. I am so happy for you 3. Athenadora beamed. "Paris sounds lovely. I must call Didim. She and her mate will be overjoyed. Perhaps they will want to join us in France. Thankfully, they are vacationing in Spain right now. Nepal is a bit too far for a spur-of-the-moment celebration. Come, Pisha, let us find more suitable clothing for a midnight hunt." Sulpicia gave each of the 3 a warm hug, congratulating them. Before turning and walking out the door behind Athenadora. "Are we not to look for our mate, brother?" Keyes demanded, scowling. It is not such a safe world out there that we can be assured she will find us unharmed. We should locate her if we can, and watch over her until she is old enough to come to us. Of course, Keyes, you are right, but I must confess I do not know where to begin our search. If you have any suggestions I will be glad to hear them. Marcus forestalled the sharp retort he knew was forthcoming. Keyes, you are correct. There are many dangers in the world. But, as Arrow pointed out, we do not know where our mate is, or where to start looking for her. We must have faith, brother, that the Moirai would not have let us wait this long in vain. We can certainly search for her, he continued. But think on it, brother. One of the three of us must always be with those searching. No one else would recognize what she is to us. It could be more dangerous to send the guard out without one of us. She could easily become a meal. Arrow, Marcus and Keyes all growled low at the thought. Black eyes snapped to the guards, who lowered themselves to their knees, avoiding all eye contact. Finally Keyes sighed. You were right, Marcus. You too, Arrow. The world is too big for us to find her tonight. Let us go hunt. This is a day for celebration. But I will not be content depending on the fates, Marcus. We will search, brothers. As often as we can. And search they had, over the years. Only the guard knew that at least one of the three was usually away from the castle. And only Felix, Dimitri, and the twins knew why. Athenadora and Sulpicia had decided to join Didymus and her mate a few years after the bond had changed. They considered that the king's mate would not appreciate the presence of the former companions when she and the brothers finally met. There would be time enough to get to know her after she was secure in her mating bond. Years passed. Halfway through her 18th year, the buds had begun to loosen. Something had occurred, but the kings did not know what. Arrow was inexorably hopeful that the change meant they would meet their mate soon. A couple months later a dull silver scar appeared on the vines. The rulers had cried out in unison, holding their left wrists, and writhing at the unexpected pain. They knew that something terrible had happened to their mate. The bond also told them she had survived. Keyes was frantic, and the other two barely less so. They had not given up searching all these years, but with the bond indicating the impending meeting, they were certain they needed to stay together. And that meant that, until they had more information, they would remain in the castle. Marcus felt the flavor of the bond change just after their mate's 18th birthday. He got the impression that her soul was searching theirs, as theirs had been waiting all these years for her. Then came the day when the bond once again flared brightly, and he was sure their mate knew of them. His anticipation grew to fevered heights. Marcus was pulled from his musings when the doors of the throne room banged open, and a dark-skinned vampire walked in, dragging behind him a half-dead boy. Keyes rose from his throne and regarded the newcomer with a scowl. What is the meaning of this? Why do you bring a human, alive, into our presence? He crossed his arms in front of his chest and glared at the boy in disgust. He stinks like wet dog, and he cut himself off abruptly, as his eyes shot up to the unfamiliar male in disbelief. You brought a werewolf into our midst. To me, I'm not sure whether to kill you or thank you for the gift. He reached for the boy. Brother, Arrow interrupted. Perhaps we should give our visitor a chance to introduce himself and explain. The werewolf will keep. He's in no state to fight us, and the moon is not full this night. Marcus tilted his head and sniffed the air curiously. He does not have quite the right scent. Hint of feral madness I remember from werewolves is absent. Interesting. Continue, please, Arrow. This boy intrigues me. Arrow nodded once to Marcus, silently thanking him for his observation. Now, sir, who are you and what is your business with the Vulturi? He asked the stranger. Laurent drew himself up self-importantly. Majesties, he began. My name is Laurent. I have come to report a human left with knowledge of our world. The girl played a role in the destruction of my coven leader, who was mated to Victoria, the other in my coven. We have also discovered a den of werewolves, who have taken the human under their protection. Victoria and I managed to capture this one, he shook Seth, to provide the Volturi with information about their pack and this human. We also ask for aid in disposing of the girl, as we could not finish her before the dogs interfered. Somberly, Arrow spoke, this is grave news, indeed. This human must certainly be dealt with. How was she able to cause the death of your coven leader? He held up his hand, stopping Laurent before he could respond. With your indulgence, I will see for myself. Please take my hand. Laurent eyed Arrow's outstretched hand warily. He knew what the king was capable of, and he had thought about it, while hiding with Seth in the cargo plane he used to get to Italy. He had decided that he and Victoria were blameless. After all, neither of them had hunted the girl, as James did. They were avenging a mate, and ridding their world of a threat to its secrecy. He put his hand in Arrow's with a smug smile. Marcus watched as Arrow made small noises, his forehead creasing and a moe of distaste painting his features. Arrow's expression got darker and what Marcus saw made him leap up in disbelief. For the first time since their mate bond began, Marcus saw Arrow's lines react while his and Keys's remained unchanged. Arrow's bond lines started to glow, lightly at first, and then with increasing brightness, and the petals of the bud opened tiniest bit. Before he could reach his brother to relay this new wonder, Arrow roared with rage and agony. His eyes melted to pitch black and he tore into the other vampire with undiluted wrath. Marcus saw fear overcome Laurent, before his head was separated from his body, and tossed to crash against the far wall. Arrow ripped off an arm, broke it, and then shredded it to pieces, hurling bits of vampire flesh about the room randomly. Venom sprayed everywhere. Arrow repeated the process over and over again, until there was nothing recognizable left of Laurent, but his cracked head in the far side of the room. Growling with animalistic ferocity, Arrow stalked over, picked up the head, and viciously ripped the hair from its scalp. His fury knew no bounds, and the two words he could form coherently only served tea. Oh, further Marcus's and Keys's growing anxiety. Mate, hurt, an inhuman growl from Keys's throat, followed by a sound that spoke of pain and despair. He seized his throne and violently heaved it across the room. The guard, already on edge from Arrow's unprecedented display of anger, tensed. Out, everyone out. You will not touch a single piece of this vampire filth. He will suffer agony for weeks while he reassembles and then he is mine. Then he launched himself at Arrow, hoping to relieve them both of their aggression. It sounded as though their mate needed them now, and she would need them in command of their senses. Before his own wrath could consume him, Marcus spoke to Jane. Take that boy, he gestured to Seth, to guest quarters. See that he has what he requires to regain his strength, but do not leave him unguarded. Guard him yourself, and use your gift as needed. Send word the moment he regains consciousness. Go now, he finished with a snarl. He then joined Keys and Arrow as they led themselves and each other for control. Several hours later, the throne room was in shambles. Columns of stone were missing large chunks, the walls were cracked, and the king's thrones were completely obliterated. The brothers sported gashes and fissures, but were largely unharmed. They had learned throughout the years that it was simply not possible to bite or inflict a great deal of damage on each other. It was like purposefully injuring oneself and the bond did not allow it. Now Arrow, would you please tell us what you saw? Your bond to our mate has increased on its own, without mine or Keys's. You saw her in that vampire's mind, Marcus stated. She is hurt. How badly? Where is she? What of the boy? She is aware of our world, Marcus, as we suspected. That savage's coven encountered her earlier this year, not long before the scar appeared on the bond. I did not see anything in his mind that would explain that, though. She was in the company of the Cullens, he spat the name. Lawrence Coven thought her a pet. And the leader set a game to catch her. This waste of venom left rather than join the chase, but agreed to help his coven mate, Victoria, torture and kill our mate when the hunt failed and her mate, James, wound up dead instead. Arrow growls had increased in intensity and duration while he described what he saw in Lawrence's mind. By the end, his words were barely decipherable. Marcus spoke quickly, before Arrow became further incensed. And the boy, is he indeed a werewolf? Why was he protecting our mate? I would very much like to know her name, Arrow, Keys interjected, if you have learned it. Bella, Arrow breathed, reverently. Her full name I do not know, but she is called Bella. And it suits her, for she is a beauty. The boy is not a child of the moon. He is a shapeshifter, changing at will. And he and his pack did indeed protect our Bella. She is a great friend to their rightful leader. The wolf form was chosen out of necessity by their ancestors. They are fully cognizant while shifted. Before he could go on, there was a brisk knock, and Felix entered the room. Masters, he bowed, the boy is awake, and healing quickly. He chuckled and continued, he will not stop staring at Jane. She is most disconcerted, I think. She has not used her gift on him, has she, Felix? Arrow asked. Now that they knew the boy had helped their mate, they were loath to see further harm come to him. She has not, master. He has not tried to escape, nor has he been hostile in any way. He gazes at Jane as though she hung the moon. We will see this for ourselves, Arrow, Keys broke in impatiently. We do not have time to gossip about foolish children while our mate lies injured. Tell us the rest of your tale on the way to see this boy. With that terse reprimand, Keyes exited the room, Arrow and Marcus on his heels. As they made their way to the guest quarters, Arrow relayed the last moments Laurent had spent near their mate. Blank, underscore, blank. Seth had awakened in pain, not knowing where he was. Surrounded by the sickly sweet smell of too many leeches. He was just able to roll to the edge of the bed he found himself on, before he brought up the contents of his stomach. Great, racking dry heaves continued to take over his body. His head was pounding and his body ached with such severity that he could not phase. He whimpered and tried to sit up, only to be stopped by a cold voice. I would not try that, boy. The owner of the voice was female, and obviously a bloodsucker. He had not scented one in the room. Seth was petrified, and tried desperately to reach for his wolf, who would not come. His panic was evident, as his heart rate increased and his breath came in short, quick pants. He would not see his friends and family again, and right now could not even say goodbye to his pack through the mind link. He was about to die, and was not prepared for it. Even though he was currently still alive, the implications of his animate state further terrified him. He heard the female call for someone to come, but the rest of what she said was lost in a haze of fear. Suddenly he felt a cool hand on his back, and the same voice said sharply, "Boy, come back. You are safe for the moment. Master Marcus was most insistent that you were cared for. Cease this behavior and lay back down so your body may rest. You were badly used by the vampire who brought you here, but he has been dealt with. And you have been treated well. Think on that and do not work yourself up to such a state. Breathe." Taking her advice with a shuddering inhalation, Seth looked up, and gasped in surprise as he felt the pure link of imprinting form between himself and the red eyes that met him. He gaped, unbelieving, and unable to look away. After what seemed like an age, but was only an instant. The eyes turned wary and confused, and the young vampire retreated to the wall near the door. She glared, and appeared to be debating something, before scowling and looking expectantly at the doorway. Seth saw that she looked quite young, but somehow gave the impression of age beyond his comprehension. Her hair was light brown, almost blonde, and fell to her shoulders. She was extremely petite, but carried herself with great presence. He could not stop staring. A hulking vampire filled the entrance, followed by two more males and a human man with a mop and bucket of soapy water. The man immediately began to clean the mess Seth had left, working quickly without speaking. When he was finished, he inclined his head to the vampires in the room, and left. "Sister," the youngest-looking one said. "I see the boy is awake. Why does he watch you so, Jane?" The large one asked. "Jane," murmured Seth, "I am Seth." He maintained his gaze. Jane made a sound between a hiss and an exasperated huff. "Felix, go inform the masters that he has regained consciousness. Dimitri, see if you can get him to lie down. I can see his injuries healing, the bruising around his ribs and throat has lessened, and the lump on his head as well. But he would do better resting." Although she was more than a foot shorter than the two, they wasted no time heeding her command. Seth found himself gently but firmly pressed back to the mattress by the one called Dimitri. His head swam, though not as badly as before. He adjusted his position until he could see Jane again, and then was content to lay back and observe her. Very soon he heard voices in the hallway, and was startled to hear a voice relaying exactly what had happened the night Bella was attacked. When he described the accident, beginning even before Seth had arrived at the scene. His voice was laced with anguish and distress. He also heard two others growl with anger and alarm. Shortly after, 3 vampires entered the room. Worry etched into every line of his face. Keyes began issuing orders as they entered the room to find their most trusted guards there. "Dimitri, ready the jet for takeoff. File a flight plan for..." He paused and glanced at Arrow. "Forks, Washington," Arrow murmured, "but I'm not sure where the nearest airport is." "Port Angeles," a weak voice contributed. Keyes nodded to the boy on the bed. "Port Angeles, Dimitri. Aaron, GE suitable transportation to Forks from there. Gather the senior guard in our study in 30 minutes. Alec, summon Sulpicia, Athenadora and Didymu. They will govern in our absence. We leave in 3 hours. Go." Dimitri and Alec disappeared from the room without a word. As one, the 3 kings turned fully to face the young shifter. Seth was quite curious about why they were so interested in, and seemingly concerned for, Bella. Studying them closely, he saw beyond the anxiety that was plainly evident in the lines of their faces and bodies. The one issuing orders was white-haired, and looked to be over 30, if Seth had to guess. The other 2 both had dark hair and were younger. The white-haired one looked as though he was teetering on the edge of panic. Though his commands were clearly and crisply given, Seth could see the tightness around his black eyes, and the choppiness of his movements. Clearly, he did not want to waste any time. Seth was certain that if he could, this one would already be mid-flight to Washington. Seth took a moment to respect the responsibility he showed to his obvious position of power. The one with the darkest hair was excited beneath his worry. Every so often he would rock up to the balls of his feet, as he seemed to lose himself in thought, smiling slightly. Then he would come back to himself and his expression would darken with concern. The last one appeared to be the youngest. Slightly taller than the others, with dark brown hair. He had stopped, and looked between Seth and Jane with utter astonishment. Seth sensed that he was normally placid, for a vampire. And his manner suggested great wisdom. These vampires were not what he expected. The dark-haired one glided up to Seth's side, brushing Jane's hand on the way by. "Seth, my dear boy," he exclaimed. "Dear, dear boy, we cannot thank you enough. You and your two pack mates. You were willing to sacrifice everything, your very lives, to protect our mate. We will be forever in your debt." "Your mate?" Seth asked. "I'm confused. I don't know your mate. I don't know who you are. I don't even know where I am. The last thing I remember is a red-headed female choking me until I passed out. I don't know how I got so banged up. And how did you know my name?" "Arrow," the wise one said, "you are getting ahead of yourself. Pray, allow me to clarify for him." "Of course, Marcus." "Of course," the one called Arrow replied. Marcus walked to stand next to Arrow. He looked at Seth steadily and then began, "Seth, my name is Marcus, and these are my brothers Arrow and Keys," he gestured to the white-haired one. "We are the leaders of the Vulturi, the ruling coven of vampires. We are responsible for order within our world, and also work diligently to protect the secret of our existence. You are in Volterra, Italy, where we make our home." Arrow took over the explanation. "Laurent, the vampire who brought you here, thought it would be amusing to mistreat you while you were unable to fight back. He showed no care for you while he ran with you through the forest. Your body was battered against rocks, trees, and the ground. He tossed you about roughly, and entertained himself by breaking several of your ribs during the flight over. Thankfully, he did not crush them. The lump on your head is the result of a particularly harsh blow he gave you to ensure your continued subdual. As for your name, I can read every thought a person has ever had with a mere touch of my hand. I saw all this from Laurent's mind before I tore him apart. And I just took your name from Jane as I passed her." "You killed him? Why, I thought he was just being a vampire." Seth muttered the last quietly. "Do not equate his behavior to being a vampire. That creature is beneath contempt. And he is not dead. That would be too kind. He will wish for death before I am done with him. His screams will echo through the ages and he will have deserved every minute of agony I give him before I turn him to ash." Keys spat, practically frothing at the mouth. "Peace, Keys. You will have your revenge. On Laurent and on Victoria. And we have yet to answer Seth's most pertinent question." Marcus turned back to Seth. "You, young wolf, did indeed protect our mate. Although you were unable to stop her from being injured, you prevented her immediate death when you and the other two wolves intercepted Laurent and Victoria. We pray that her injuries are not too severe, or that we arrive to change her in time, if need be." "Bella," Seth whispered incredulously, "Bella is your mate. How do you know? When did you know? If you knew, why has she never spoken of you? Does she know?" "Be still, Seth. Calm yourself. Bella is indeed of whom we speak. I have a gift of my own. I see bonds between people. There are many types of bonds, but the mating bond for vampires is unmistakable. We and Bella, however, have a unique bond. She is mated to Arrow, Keys and me. To all three of us. The bond has existed for 1,500 years. Marcus smiled as Seth's eyes bulged and his mouth fell open. "Yes, it is not a time span that one so young can fathom. We saw her birth in the bond, and have witnessed several significant changes within the last year that we cannot explain. We strongly suspect that she knows of us, that we are her soulmates, but we do not know for sure. However, until Arrow saw her in Laurent's mind, we had no idea who our mate was. We had been searching for her for 18 years. So that we could protect her, even from afar, but our efforts were fruitless. We are deeply distressed at the circumstances, but elated that we finally know who and where our mate is. I would dearly love to look at your thoughts, young Seth, if you would allow me," Arrow said, holding out his hand with a smile. Seth lowered his eyes. He hesitated. "I'm pretty Sue." My alpha would be completely pissed off if I let you do that. Sorry. Vampires are sort of our #1 enemy. Although I don't feel the urge to kill any of you, which is weird, he added, as his eyes cut to Jane and back quickly. Arrow waved away the apology as Keys reminded his brothers that they were to meet the guards in their study soon. Felix will help you wash up, if you'd like, Keys offered, and find you some clean clothes. You will, of course, be accompanying us back to Washington. I suspect your pack is frantic over your abduction, and we will have to handle them with great care. Especially now, Marcus put in, once again looking between Jane and Seth and smiling. Arrow noticed this, and touched Marcus's hand, his eyebrows climbing to the ceiling at what he saw there. The 3B. Rothers entered their study to find all the senior guard, except Felix and Dimitri, waiting for them. They dispatched Alec and Jane to see to all the packing for the upcoming trip. Then they addressed the remaining guards, Heidi, Afton, Chelsea, Santiago, and Renata. Without preamble, Arrow began, my brothers and I have news which will greatly impact our coven forever. 15 centuries ago, Marcus became aware of a mating bond the three of us would share with one person. A person who was not born until 18 years ago. September 13th, Heidi interrupted with a grin. We heard you that day, Master Arrow. You had never been more excited and you were not exactly quiet. I remember when Jane came to me and demanded to know the date. Yes, Heidi, thank you, Arrow replied dryly. Be glad I never heard a whisper of a rumor among the guards. I would have been most displeased if our news were known before we had chosen to make it so. That is no longer an issue, Arrow, Keys stated. He then glared warningly at the senior guard. This news does not travel further than this room. The three of us have been personally searching for our mate since that day 18 years ago. Mere hours ago, we finally discovered her whereabouts. Unfortunately, we also discovered she has been most grievously injured and is even now in danger from another of our kind. We are leaving to tend to our mate. We are uncertain how long we will be, but we have sent for Sulpicia, Athenadora and Didymus to oversee the Vulturi in our stead. You will obey their orders. Ensure that they are not disrespected by outsiders. And watch my new toy. If we are not back before he is mobile, throw him in the dungeon. There is no need to be gentle about it. That is all. Blank. Little more than half a day later, the Volturi jet touched down in Port Angeles. After much debate, Seth had called Jake. Billy had answered, and was ready to call Sam before Seth managed to convince the elder that it would be better if he made contact with Jake first. He asked about Bella, and learned that she had been transferred to the acute care center in Port Angeles. Jake was with her, but the rest of the pack was still in La Push. He also asked after his sister, and was told that Leah was nearly completely healed. He thanked Billy for his discretion, and told him he would contact his family soon. Seth gaped at the large jet as they drove up. It was simply sleek and black, with one crimson stripe along its length. Ah, Dimitri, the global, excellent, Marcus praised the guard. Alec and Dimitri had been sent EAD to complete the pre-flight checklist and secure a runway. The Vulturi would be wheels up in about 10 minutes. Come, Seth, Arrow said, as he clapped the boy on the back. The vampire leader had regained some of his natural exuberance. Now that they were on their way to Bella, the exterior is not nearly as impressive as the interior. Or the flight deck. Do you know anything about aeronautics? When Seth shook his head, Arrow shook his also. What a shame. I remember when the airplane was barely more than a dream. In fact, I commissioned Da Vinci to build a model for me, an ornithopter, based on one of his designs. What a brilliant human he was. He would have made a wonderful vampire, although sometimes I wonder if such genius, such innovation, is a gift in exchange for a mortal life. It seems that while we vampires can learn, we lack that instinct to develop the wonders you take for granted today. I just got a new cell phone a few weeks ago. It has a 1.3 megapixel camera. Fantastic. I remember when the telephone was invented. The camera, too. Do you have a cell phone? No, we must get you one. Arrow, be seated. Dimitri and Alec have been cleared for takeoff. Marcus shot his brother a rare look of irritation. With a devious smirk, he addressed a bemused Seth. You may sit next to Jane, Seth. She will not talk incessantly the whole flight. Arrow takes great delight in all human inventions. His special fondness is for electronics. On that subject, more than any others, it is difficult to stop him once he begins. Seth's head was reeling, as he sat down. He had been born to an age of airplanes, internet, cell phones, and flat-screen TVs. He simply could not imagine the changes these vampires had seen in their time. Jane saw his dazed expression and tried to hide a smile. She could barely remember being that young. Even though she and Alec had been turned when they were just 14, they had been vampires for well over 1,000 years. Her human life was not something she cared to dwell upon. But in the time when she was born, she would not have been considered still a child. In a rare show of humor, she leaned to Seth and whispered, "Did you know the masters are older than paper? We are also older than parchment." "My dear," Marcus said. "But not as old as papyrus." Jane smirked and Felix laughed aloud. The large vampire had to hunch himself over when he entered the aircraft, and had taken a seat right away. The seats were large and leather, with plenty of leg room, and still he looked awkward in it. Seth's head had nearly brushed the ceiling, but the chair he sank down in was blissfully comfortable. He relaxed into the flight and studied the vampires around him. He wondered why his wolf refused to see these vampires as a threat. He had reacted to their scent at first. His head was too muddled for his wolf to appear, but now he was sufficiently healed, and he still had no urge to phase. It made sense for him to feel that way about Jane, even though he was still confused about imprinting on a vampire. But he didn't understand the rest of them. He knew they drank human blood, he could see it in their eyes. But they seemed entirely civilized and polite. Maybe it was because they had taken care of him, or maybe it was because they had dealt with Laurent, or maybe it was simply because they were Jane's coven. He just couldn't figure it out. He would have to ask Sam, or maybe Jake. Jake seemed more open-minded. He already dreaded the reaction his imprinting would get from the tribe. With a sigh, he turned to Jane, and his entire body relaxed at the sight of her. Aside from her cute remark about the brothers, she had barely said 2 words to him since he had imprinted. Contemplating that, he wet his lips and took a breath, only to find he didn't know what to say. "I see you gaping like a fish, boy. What do you want? Why do you stare at me so?" Jane's voice was once again cold and authoritative. I just thought that maybe we could talk a little. You know, like how old are you? Alec is your brother, right? How did you become a vampire? I want to know about you." Seth rushed his questions out in one breath, and then took another and held it. He briefly contemplated smacking himself in the forehead, but decided that would make him look like the idiot he thought he sounded like. Jane scowled. "Yes, Alec is my brother. My twin, in fact. Master, Arrow changed us because he thought we would possess gifts as vampires. Gifts that would help him bring order to our world. He saved us. We are many centuries old. Does that answer all you wished to know about me? Do you guys have gifts?" "Yes, but you do not want to experience them," she said shortly, before dismissing him from her thoughts and turning to the window. Seth sighed. Marcus chuckled softly at the young vampire. He could tell she was interested in Seth, but she was stubborn and prickly. Jane took a long time to warm to someone, and was only truly herself when alone with members of the elite guard and the brothers. Including Seth in the small joke earlier had been quite out of character for her. Taking pity on the shifter, Marcus addressed him. "Tell us about yourself, Seth. How old are you? Tell us about your tribe. I am interested. There is no need to reveal secrets, say only what you will." "Bella," Keys interrupted, "you will tell us all you know of our mate." "If you please," Arrow added, glaring at Keys, who frowned and then nodded slightly. Seth spoke at length as the plane cut through the air. Jane glanced at him curiously when he said he was 14, tilting her head in appraisal. He blushed a bit, and she looked away. He told them about his family, and that his sister was also a wolf, the only female to ever phase. She must have been the one I saw in Laurent's mind, then. The one thrown into the tree. "We owe your family much," Arrow stated. "We must find a way to repay you." "Yeah, Leah hates being a wolf. And since she's one because of vampires in our area, she hates vampires. I think she'd bite your arm off before it was fully extended to shake her hand." He resumed talking when Keys shot him a dark and impatient look. "Bella Swan," he sighed, moved to Forks last spring to live with her dad. Charlie Swan is the chief of police in Forks. He's best friends with my dad, and Billy, who is Jake's dad and the chief of the tribe. Jake and Bella hang out a lot. I ain't really spent a lot of time with Jake yet, so I don't know much more about her. I did hear she used to date one of the Cullens. Jake is the other wolf that was with you, correct?" Arrow clarified. "He chose to protect Bella, rather than try to retrieve you. An action that likely saved both your life and hers, although he could not have known it then. Laurent and Victoria were in the water watching. He and Bella walked the beach that last night. They could not hear much of the conversation, through the distance and the waves, but they heard him refer to himself as Alpha. He also said something about a treaty with the Cullens. I'd like to know what Carlisle is doing making treaties with werewolves. Keyes cut in sharply. Children of the moon are shifters, it matters not if they are meant to be enemies of the vampires. And why was our mate dating a Cullen, Arrow? Why would I know that, Keyes? Until I can see into her mind I will not have that answer. I am not omnipotent, Arrow huffed. We are meant to kill vampires, Seth continued. If what all the legends say is true. The Cullens are not allowed on our land, and they have to stick to their diet while in Forks. They also are not allowed to bite anyone. I'm sure if we ever saw them with red eyes we would rip them apart first and ask questions later. Which is why I just don't understand why I haven't phased yet, and attacked you all. I should be struggling to stay human. Not telling you about my family. And, yes, Jake is the rightful alpha, but he's not leading the pack just yet. Sam is, since he's been a wolf the longest and has the most experience. I believe it is your connection to our Jane that is at the root of your unusual reaction, or lack thereof, Marcus declared with a knowing look at Arrow. He watched as Seth blushed and lowered his eyes. Jane's head whipped around and she demanded sharply, what connection? I imprinted on you, Seth mumbled. It's a wolf thing. It is a most intriguing bond, Marcus mused. I have never seen its like. It's like a million gossamer thin threads have sprung from Jane and embedded themselves within Seth's being. When I look more closely I see the tip of each strand. The tip within you, Seth, is barbed like a porcupine quill. If you were to pull away, Jane, I believe you would shred his very soul. And likely doom yourself as well. Jane hissed, incensed, what have you done, dog? Release me from this strange magic. Seth winced at Jane's tone and her insult, and fired back indignantly, I have no control over it. I am as surprised as you are, to have imprinted on a vampire. I have no control over it, he repeated. Would you explain more about this phenomenon, young Seth? Marcus requested. Is it a common occurrence among you shifters? Can it be reversed? What type of bond is it? Well, the legends say it's rare. But it doesn't seem all that rare to me. I am the third one to have imprinted, and my first shift was only, he broke off, wait, what day is it? It was Saturday night when I was taken. I had shifted for the first time earlier that day. His stomach gurgled and he realized he hadn't eaten since Felix had brought him some bruschetta and warm skewered mozzarella along with some clean clothes. He'd had to ask what the food was, but it had been very tasty. So new to the pack. It is Tuesday, quite early in the morning. Keyes informed him. We will be in Washington by early afternoon. This craft is able to make the flight without having to stop and refuel. Wow, cool. Anyway, there isn't really a good explanation about why we imprint. Sam's theory is kind of shot, now that my imprint is a vampire. He thinks that it is all about baby wolves, that the person who we imprint on is the best match to reproduce and carry on the gene, or something like that. Jane snorted in disgust. Because women are breeding machines. Nice to know that so much has changed in 1300 years. She stomped to the galley at front of the plane and snapped the dividers shut firmly. Seth's mouth dropped open. 1300 years, he repeated in hushed disbelief. He shook off his amazement, and continued, Billy thinks we imprint on the person who would make our wolf stronger. But I really don't know what that means. I'm not sure he knows, either. And so this is a mating bond? Marcus asked. The theory of it being for reproductive purposes suggests that. Well, it's been a mating bond so far. But the stories say that the wolf will be whatever the imprint needs, even if that's just a friend, or brother. I already have a brother, and I choose my own friends, Jane said, coming back to the cabin. And I am definitely not your mate. She handed Seth a plate of food and Marcus looked away, biting his cheek to hide a smile. Jane didn't notice as she went on, so, if this is about what I need, then I need you to just leave me alone. And stop staring. Marcus decided now wasn't the time to spell out the difference between want and need to Jane. He was quite sure she had no clue what she actually needed. Instead, he turned to Seth, and offered him the stateroom at the back of the plane. Seth thanked Jane for the food and, finishing it quickly, found the sleeping area and dropped off swiftly. The drive to the medical center was tense. The Vulturi masters were so close to their mate, and yet they could not just walk into her room and expect to be welcomed. Why don't we just go in to see her anyway? And eat anyone who tries to remove us? Keyes groused. Seth's wolf sat up and growled at this, but Seth tamped him down. He was fairly certain Keyes wasn't serious. Keyes, Marcus snapped, do not antagonize Seth. Or this Jake, who is with her also. We do not want to anger the shifters. Remember their purpose, and that these wolves protected our Bella. Besides, her father will be one who stands in our way. And I do not believe we would endear ourselves to our mate, were we to make him a meal. Could you speak with Jake on our behalf, Seth? Arrow put in. Perhaps he will be a gray. Able to at least meeting us, and together we could think on how to approach her father. We must see our mate this very afternoon, there will be no more waiting. I can try that, I suppose. I have to talk to him about Jane anyway. And that could be a good lead-in too. Oh, by the way, Jake, I also have 6 other human drinking vampires with me, and 3 are Bella's soulmates. Be a pal and let them see her, would you? He seemed to be the only one amused, so he went on at a subdued tone, Jake's a good guy, I'll talk to him. They get to the hospital and the others stayed in the car as Seth walked in. He was informed that Bella was in the ICU, and visitors needed to be checked in. I actually wanted to talk to someone who was here with her, if you don't mind, he smiled at the woman behind the counter. His name is Jacob Black. Is there a way for you to call him and let him know I need to see him? I'm Seth. I'll just call up to the nurse's station. You can wait there, she said, pointing to a row of plastic chairs behind Seth. He looked at them askance, and found a bare spot of wall to lean against, facing the elevators. A few minutes later, the doors opened, and Jake nearly sprinted out of the car. His face lit with a grin when he saw Seth, and he pulled him into a hug, only to draw back a moment later with a scowl. Seth, man, what the hell? What happened to you? You've been gone for nearly 3 days. If you were okay, couldn't you have called someone to let them know? The pack is worried sick, your parents are frantic, Leah won't come out of her room or talk to anyone, and half the pack wants to string me up for letting that leech take you. And here you are, looking entirely healed, and absolutely reeking of bloodsuckers. He punctuated his rant with arms thrown up, shaking lightly. I am glad to see you, though. He added, I'm glad to see you, too. I talked to Billy. He told me you were here, but I asked him not to say anything to anyone. I needed to talk to you first, Jake. Before Sam or anyone else. I'll call my family after. Jake looked at the younger boy. Seth looked entirely serious, which was unlike him. Normally, Seth was cheerful, even a bit on the naive side. He was, Jake supposed, a little like Jake himself. But now he looked almost as though he was backed into a corner. Let's go outside, Seth, and you can tell me. I promise I'll listen, no matter how bad you think it is. He led Seth to a small green space near the hospital, where they sat against one of the trees. Start from what happened after that bloodsucker with the dreads took you. I thought I was going to die, Jake. When I woke up the smell of leech was so strong that I puked. But my head was pounding too badly to phase. And then I just didn't want to phase, even when I felt better. He took a breath. I was in Italy, Jake, and I imprinted on a vampire. Italy? Jake queried, after a pause. He needed time to think about a vampire as an imprint. Yeah, I woke up there yesterday. Laurent had banged me up pretty good. He took me to the Vulturi, but he made a big mistake. Which is the next thing I have to tell you, he stopped as Jake interrupted firmly. The Volturi, you mean the leaders of the vampire world? At Seth's wary nod, he continued, did you meet the kings? Seth gaped at Jake, and then muttered, there are times when I feel like I will never understand anything. Louder, he added, you know about them. That makes this easier, I guess. They want to talk to you. The vampire I imprinted on is one of their guards. Her name is Jane. They are waiting in the car, do you want to meet them there? Jake sighed, assuming that they would want privacy for the conversation he suspected was about to take place. And yet, the prospect of being in a confined space with leech stink did not appeal to him. Still, he nodded at Seth's question, and followed his wolf brother to the long limousine. He didn't expect to be met with the red-eyed gazes of 7 vampires when he opened the door. Nevertheless, he maintained his composure, knowing that the female was Seth's imprint. If Seth's wolf had not made an appearance in front of these others, then he knew that this Jane considered this group family. He would not physically or emotionally harm an imprint. Even so, Jake was unsure of this new development. Sam and Jared were the only other imprinted wolves, and they definitely had a mating bond. It seemed to lend credence to Sam's theory of genetic compatibility, but this imprint of Seth's blew that idea out of the water. He decided to wait until he was phased with Seth to view it through the mind link. He knew that the elders, Sam and the rest of the pack would be very unhappy about this, and he suspected that his time as alpha was fast approaching. He mildly regretted taking on so much responsibility so soon, but was sure it would be best for the tribe. Good leaders could not afford to be so blindly prejudiced. It would prevent them from recognizing real dangers. Street, eyeing himself for the upcoming conversation, Jake entered the limo. He looked at Seth. I think this conversation is best held in private, Seth. Maybe Jane can take a walk with you. I'm sure they can contact her when we're done here. And then I'll take you back to La Push, and we can deal with the fallout together. Arrow nodded. Jane, dear, go with young Seth. I'll call you when we are done here. Yeah. Nay exited the vehicle with a glare at everyone except Seth. Him she ignored completely. Everyone could hear her muttering as she began walking in a random direction. Oh sure, just like men. Stick together, no matter what. The link to the boy is intriguing, Jane. There is no denying it, Jane. Go for a walk with him, Jane. Didn't I say I needed him to leave me alone? I'm pretty sure I heard myself say that. She stopped. And turned back to the young wolf, who was standing with his shoulders hunched dejectedly. Well, she snapped, are we going for a walk, or not? I am fairly certain I am walking, and you are just standing there. With that, she stalked away once more. Seth swallowed his delighted grin and followed quickly. Jake cocked his head as he contemplated them. Yes, definitely a strange imprint. Pushing that issue to the back of his mind, he shut the door and regarded the others still in the vehicle. His wolf was on edge, he was outnumbered, and couldn't phase in such a small space anyway. He took a deep breath and let it out slowly, reminding himself that they were probably not his enemy, no matter their nature. Arrow broke the silence. You are Jake, rightful alpha of the wolf shifters. It sounded like a question, but was obviously not. Jake nodded. Is this private enough for you, or should I send away the guard? Jake shook his head. If this is private enough for you, then I'm good. I just didn't want Seth in here. Anything he thinks about while he's a wolf will be known to the pack before the thought is barely complete. I can keep my mind private, but I am the alpha, as you said. Seth doesn't have any practice controlling or blocking his thoughts. Bella is already uncomfortable with Sam and a couple others. I refuse to betray her trust by allowing the pack mind into her intimate affairs. You are indeed a most worthy friend, Jake. Marcus said, loyalty is a rare and treasured gift that you give our mate. I am Marcus, of the Vulturi, and these are my soul brothers, Arrow and Keys. So, she is your mate. Then, Jake confirmed, we had just figured that out a few minutes before she was attacked. Although she seemed to think that one of you had already been mated. What? Keys cried angrily. Who would feed her that lie? She learned everything she knows about your world from the Cullens, Jake said. She told me Carlisle had a painting of you, and when she asked he warned her about you. He said he had been told your mate had died, Marcus. He also said that you were all cruel, ruthless, and dangerous, with a complete disdain for human life. Keys chuckled, appeased. Well, Marcus has never had a mate other than Bella, dead or otherwise, but we can be cruel, ruthless, and dangerous when necessary. But we most certainly do not disdain human life, Arrow put in. Humans offer so much more than their blood. Although I admit that sometimes that is the best part. His red eyes gleamed appreciatively and Jake snarled lightly. Marcus frowned at Arrow. First Keys, then you. Please do not provoke the shifters. Discussions about our dietary habits can certainly wait until after we have been assured of our mate's well-being. Abashed, Arrow agreed. Forgive me, Jake. I did not mean to anger you. We will be forever grateful to you, Seth, and Leah, for protecting our Bella. I do not know if Seth mentioned my gift to you, but I am able to see a person's every thought with a single touch. I warn you, though, it will be every thought and experience you have ever had, awake or asleep, from the beginning of your consciousness. If you allow me to touch you, I will know all you know, or have thought, about Bella. May I? Jake regarded Arrow's outstretched hand cautiously. He appreciated the explicit warning, and respected the vampire for being so honest about the entirety of his gift. I will give you my hand. He finally said, but you probably won't like everything you see in my mind about your mate. Please understand that, while I know she is not my mate, I have loved her since we were children. I know she is not mine, he repeated, and you are what her soul needs. But neither she nor I were aware of that until a few days ago. You might envy me for the years I knew her and you didn't. But try not to lose your temper when you see my thoughts about her. I don't think I'd survive an attack in here. Keys scowled when he imagined what thoughts this virile young wolf would entertain about their mate. But Arrow nodded his head gravely. I will not bias my conclusion based solely on your past thoughts, Jake. I must also consider your current mind, and your actions. While not normally so personally affected, I have sat in judgment of the vampire world for over 1,000 years. I would like to believe that, over time, I have learned to moderate fairly. And so Jake gave Arrow his hand. The ancient vampire's facial expressions changed many times over a short period of time he sat reading Jake's life, but he did not say a thing until he sat back. A most worthy friend, indeed, was the first thing he said. And so mature in your thoughts. I agree with you regarding shifters and vampires, and would like to speak of it in greater detail, at another time. Brothers, words will never be enough to convey just how much we owe this young alpha. He has been a source of comfort and light to our mate in this last year. Steadfast and true. What did you see of the Cullens? Keyes growled. Ah, our old friend Carlyle and his family may find their next visit to Volterra involuntary and unpleasant. Jake thinks they regarded her as a pet, treated her poorly, protected her badly, and abandoned her heartlessly. And brothers, he added, as his eyes blackened and his chest rumbled with a growl, they allowed her to be bitten by Victoria's mate. On her left wrist. That is the scar and the pain we felt. Our mate was bitten by a strange male, and not permitted to change. This son of Carlyle's, Edward, sucked the venom out. And she was his singer. He concluded with a roar. Marcus and Keyes snarled, and in that moment Jake was glad he was not a Cullen. He was relieved when the subject quickly moved to Charlie, and getting him to allow the Vulturi in to see and stay with Bella. After some discussion, they decided there was nothing they could do but tell Charlie the whole truth. No amount of inventiveness would explain the three strange males appearing without prior acquaintance and refusing to leave Bella's side. Jake was sent to persuade Charlie to leave Bella's side for the time it would take to convince him to trust Bella's future to three vampire mates. Felix and Dimitri were ordered to scout the area, to ensure that there were no other vampires waiting. It took some time to get Charlie to agree to take a break from his bedside vigil. Bella had no other family to sit with her, except Charlie. Renee had been furious when Bella refused to leave Forks after the Cullens had left, and had not spoken to either Bella or Charlie in months. Every form of communication went unanswered, and Charlie was disgusted by her pettiness. He had been grateful when Jake had insisted on staying also, assuring Charlie that the school would understand and Jake wouldn't fall behind. Charlie balked when Jake led him to the limousine. You didn't say anything about leaving the hospital, Jake. What do you want that we can't talk about here? Bella has no one watching her. Bella has more protection than you know now. Charlie, Jake replied. That's what I want to talk to you about. But you aren't going to believe me without proof, and for that we need somewhere without an audience. There's a park nearby with a lot of tree cover. It's only about 5 minutes. You listen on the way there, and you can yell at me on the way back, if you want. Charlie huffed and got in the vehicle, glowering at the three men inside. Who are you, and what do any of you have to do with my Bella? And what do you mean she has protection, Jake? From whom? Just listen, Charlie, and we'll explain. Jake began with the Quileute legends, moved on to the Cullens and Bella, and concluded with Bella's dreams. Charlie's expression got progressively darker, but he held his tongue until Jake was done. You are telling me, he began in a low, measured tone, that Bella was dating a vampire who treated her like a pet, and no one ever thought I should know. You're saying that everyone important in my life knew all of this. And not one of you thought I could be trusted. I have been best friends with Harry and Billy for more than 30 years. Jake and the Kings regarded Charlie with perplexed astonishment. You don't need me to prove it to you, Charlie, Jake asked. No, Charlie stated flatly. You seem to forget my position in Forks, the career I have. I knew there was something odd about the Cullens. Here were too many things that were strange, or didn't add up. But Carlyle was liked and respected, and everyone said he was a good doctor. Dedicated, hardworking, tireless. And his kids never got into any sort of trouble. Even if I couldn't stand seeing Bella with that Edward, I could come up with no good reason to make her stay away. I've also never seen growth spurts like you and the others in your pack went through before. It's just not normal. And you are not the kind of man who would pull me away from Bella, at a time like this, just to start spinning fairy tales. Or horror stories, or whatever. He turned to the three other men in the car. Now that Jake has told me his part, I am going to ask again. Who are you and what do you have to do with my daughter? Chief Swan, Marcus began. I am Marcus, and this is Arrow and Keyes. We are the Vulturi, and our coven maintains order within the vampire world. He explained his gift, and the bond the brothers share. He told Charlie everything, From the time they were little more than rapacious animals, to the way they were now regarded by some in the vampire world. He described the way he had first discovered their shared mating bond, and he work they did to ensure a safer world for their mate. Charlie goggled when Marcus mentioned their age and how long they had waited for their mate, and frowned deeply when the ancient king detailed the day she was born. And the searching they had done. The bond changed incrementally when she became aware of our world and we knew we would meet her soon. We felt the pain of the vampire bite she sustained. He paused at growls from Arrow and Keys, and a shouted oath from Charlie, although she was prevented from changing. And we felt her soul searching for ours, the bond flaring brightly when she realized who her mates are. She is destined for us, Chief, as we are destined for her. The bond has existed as long as we have, growing from within the very core of our beings. She is our essence, our spirit, our soul. Without her, we are nothing more than empty shells, existing through eternity without purpose. We will not be kept from her, but we do not want to make ourselves your enemy. Bella needs them just as much as they need her. Charlie, Jake put in when Charlie sat back and said nothing. Those dreams she has been having are about them. All three of them. She has been trying desperately to reach them. As they have been trying desperately to reach her. Not sleeping, barely eating, retreating into herself. That's her soul crying with loneliness, feeling incomplete. Charlie leaned his head back against the seat and closed his eyes. His voice was heavy with regret as he spoke. Your dad gave me too much credit, Jake. I may have noticed Bella was hurting, but after you started to visit her, I didn't do a thing. I should have tried to talk to her more. She wouldn't have told you anything, Charlie, Jake tried to soothe. The Cullens told her that any human aware of vampires are either turned or killed. No exceptions. She was afraid for you. Besides, how do you tell your dad that you're meant to be with 3 men? Charlie's eyes snapped open and he glared at everyone. I was trying not to think about that, thanks, Jake. But it sounds like, even if I could keep you 3 away from her, all I would be doing is hurting Bella. She's been hurt enough. Now let's head back to the hospital. I'll make sure you are allowed to see and stay with her. The doctor kept her unconscious for a couple days, but weaned her off the drugs this morning. She hasn't woken up yet, but she should sometime today. He rubbed his hand over his face. God, I hope she wakes up. And Jake, you will tell me who else is protecting her and why she needs protection. How did these 3 find her, and what really happened? This wasn't an accident, was it? No, Charlie, Jake responded, as Arrow ordered Alec to drive them back to the hospital. It wasn't. We need to pick up Seth and get to La Push. There is a lot of explaining to do. And I may just appreciate your support at the end of the day. Who knows? He muttered, Seth and I might need a place to live. Blank, _ blank. The Kings looked at their mate. Anguish coloring every line of their bodies. The moment they had looked upon her, Marcus saw his bond and Keys's progress to equal Arrow's once more. Bella looked so small, so vulnerable. Her head was swathed with bandages, she had a cast on one leg, and she was a mass of bruises and road rash. What undamaged skin they could see was as pale as theirs. She had IVs hooked up to the tender flesh on the back of her hand. And a cannula at her nostrils delivering oxygen. Bags and wires were everywhere, caring for her needs and monitoring every function of her body. Machines whirred and beeped, and the brothers had a hard time containing the rage within themselves. Charlie and Jake stood in the doorway. They wanted to see Bella before they left for La Push, and witness the vampires' interaction with her. Charlie would not be entirely comfortable until he saw for himself that they cared for her. Ever so lightly, as though he was reaching to touch a butterfly's wing, Arrow brow. GHT the back of his fingers to Bella's cheek. He stroked once, and then abruptly stopped. His eyes flew to his brother's. He looked panicked, his eyes lost, wild, and frightened. Her mind, brothers, it is not there. I cannot see her thoughts. What if she is damaged beyond repair? He pulled his hand back and dropped his head, looking defeated. Marcus and Keys looked a hair's breadth away from despair. Jake strode to the black-haired vampire and laid his hand upon Arrow's shoulder. Remember that Edward could not read her mind, either, Arrow. You heard her say that in my mind. Didn't you take note of it? Arrow's head snapped up and his eyes cleared. You were right, of course. It was pushed to the back of my mind, but you are correct. Remarkable, he breathed. She is remarkable in every way. It happy. She is immune to gifts that affect the mind, he explained to his brothers. Bella's head throbbed and her body ached everywhere. She recognized the light, floating feeling of morphine, but if she was feeling the pain then it was wearing off. She felt a cool, delicate brush against her cheek, and her spirits buoyed. The voice she heard was a balm to her soul, but the hopelessness within the tone made her heart ache. She wanted nothing more than to comfort and soothe. She warred in her mind, willing herself to open her eyes. The lids were heavy, and her eyes ached, but several moments later he was able to lift those lids a fraction. Marcus detected the movement, and called his brothers to attention. They each laid a gentle hand upon their mate and spoke soothing words, full of love and devotion. Bella's eyes were unfocused. All she saw was 3 blurry shapes hovering over her with great care. But it was enough. Relief suffused her every pore, and she opened parched lips to whisper just 3 words. Before her eyes fluttered shut again and she fell into peaceful repose. "You found me." Keys fell to his knees and laid his head upon the bed, breathing in his mate. Arrow choked back the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. And Marcus saw the bond flare, the blossoms opening fully as the pieces of one soul united finally from 4 separate beings. Marcus continued to observe the bond that had enthralled him for so many centuries. The vines had, in fact, matured throughout Bella's life, and now began to extend once more, beginning at the base of the blossoms and stretching toward their mate. He watched, astounded, as delicate strands of each of the 6 golden lines connecting him and his brothers appeared to twine around the growing vines. The bond reached Bella, and began to surround her, growing up and around her entire body. It encircled each arm, each leg, and her torso, before running daintily up the sides of her neck to her temples. From there, a delicate circlet of green and gold grew around her head, blossoming wildly. Then the entire bond burst into blinding brilliance before finally completing its transformation. Marcus stared in awe and appreciation. She resembled an anthouse eye, a woodland nymph of flowers, ethereal, pale, and stunning. He emerged from his bond site and settled to observe his sleeping mate. Even when she didn't resemble a minor goddess from Greek mythology, she was exquisite to his eyes. When Bella awoke again a couple of hours later, she sensed her mates in the room. Without opening her eyes, she asked for some water. Seconds later she felt a touch at her lips, and wrapped them around the straw, sipping slowly. She let go of the straw and felt for the button she knew was on the side of the bed to raise it up a bit. A gentle, soothing voice protested the action. "Cara mia, my sweet, darling one, do not move. You are very injured, please do not hurt yourself further." She felt a soft touch brush the hair away from her face. "Will you open your eyes for me, Preziosa?" Nuzzling toward the hand, Bella blinked and was a little surprised to find the voice and touch belonged to Keys. His actions were inconsistent with the vampire Carlyle had described. She saw his eyes alight with reverent joy, and he stroked her hair once more. He leaned his forehead down to rest against hers lightly, and his eyes drifted close as he whispered, "At last. We have found you, at last. We are whole, I am complete, at last." Bella's could not stop the tears that spilled onto her cheeks. He sounded as she felt, as though they had been living with a barren night sky. And suddenly the moon, stars, and every manner of heavenly body appeared in a shower of brilliance. She no longer felt dark, empty and hopeless. This vampire looked at her as how he would thank her for the opportunity to spend the remainder of his existence worshipping her. It was overwhelming, and the pain and isolation of her entire life swept over her in the face of absolute adoration. She began to weep. Great, heaving sobs racked her body, releasing all the hurt she had kept inside since childhood. She didn't have to be strong for these 3. She would never have to worry about taking care of herself, or them, because she had to. She would care for them to reciprocate the unequivocal love she already felt from them. There would be no flighty and irresponsible mother, no false love with a false family to mold her into a shell of herself. Even the relationship she had with a father she loved was awkward and emotionally stilted. With these vampires, she was finally free, finally safe. And the relief engulfed her. As her tears subsided, she became aware of her mates around her. Keys had gathered her ever so carefully into his arms, wrapping himself around her protectively. His chest rumbled a soothing cadence as he let her sob. Arrow's hand caressed her hip and leg on the side opposite Keys. He held the hand that housed her IV to his lips, ensuring that the lines didn't pull, and pressed fervent kisses to her palm. Marcus was running his cool hand from the crown of her head down her spine to the base, over and over again. He regarded her and her bonds sadly, seeing purity in only 3. Jake, of course, had offered unconditional friendship, even reining in the baser instincts of his wolf to help her unite with her vampire mates. Her father, while absent and emotionally distant, loved her while expecting nothing in return. He was not perfect, but the bond was pure. The final bond was theirs, of course. Pure with passion. The white, five-petaled blossoms were perfect in every way. Keys would know what they were. He had studied flowers when the buds appeared, as a way to feel included in the bond. All the other bonds she had made in her life were tainted and decayed. Or weak and crumbling. Their fragile young mate had only two she could rely on in her life, before they had found her. The knowledge angered him, even as he offered thanks to the gods of his ancient Greece for the gift of their mate. Bella had stopped crying, and Keys gently tilted her face up to his. His fingers traced the circles beneath her eyes, wiping away tears, and noticing that she, as Jake said, had not been sleeping well of late. He eased her back to the mattress with a quiet admonishment. My darling, lay back. You need your rest. Know that we are here for you and will never leave you. You belong to us. And we belong to you, Arrow continued. We have waited so long, so very many years, for you. We are overjoyed to be with you. Although we wish you were not injured. Finished Marcus. We will protect you, sweet darling, from any who dare think to harm you again. You are safe with us, forever. Bella sighed as the last of the tension left her body. I feel safe. Entirely safe. Entirely whole, entirely right. Maybe my body is bruised and broken, but my soul has found its home with you. Her eyes drifted shut. You are not what I expected. Don't leave me. She heard Marcus's reassurance as she fell asleep once more. We will stay by your side, Amata. Our devotion to you is unshakable. Sleep now. Blank. Jake had called his father before arriving on the reservation, and asked him to gather the elders and the pack. The entire pack, Jake specified, including anyone who was scheduled to patrol. He assured his father that La Push would be protected. He also asked that Harry, Sue and Leah be told that Seth was safe. He told Billy to include Sue in the meeting, even though she was not on the council. Billy had agreed, although he knew there would be a fight with Sam about suspending the patrols, even for a short time. It was late afternoon when Jake and Seth arrived at the border of La Push with Charlie, Jane, Felix, and Dimitri. Alec had dropped the five of them off at Charlie's, where they picked up the cruiser. Then Alec returned to the hospital to provide extra protection to Bella. The large vampire and the tracker had spent the afternoon scouring Port Angeles and Forks for signs of vampires but found none. Dimitri had been able to pick up Victoria's essence from Seth in Volterra, and Rila's. He also knew it from his coven mate Heidi. He remembered how Victoria had evaded them 500 years ago, and informed the kings of who she was. He knew she was in Seattle, and would be able to warn his masters if she started toward Bella. Regardless of any gift she possessed, there would be no escape for Victoria once the brothers focused upon her capture. Jake had asked Dimitri and Felix to come along and guard La Push. While he met with the elders and pack, Jake did not want anyone shifted before he had a chance to bring Jane onto the reservation to meet the elders and discuss the situation. He phased at the border, and when he sensed no other wolves, nodded his head for Seth to join him. Although he himself was certain of the imprint, he had a duty to check Seth's mind to ensure the bond was legitimate. As an imprint, Jane was allowed on tribal lands, but because she was a vampire, the pack would attack her on sight. Jake did not want a fight to break out before he had a chance to proclaim his authority over the wolves, and he could not in good conscience do that without performing some due diligence. He would claim his birthright before Jane. Seth and Charlie joined them. After checking Seth's imprint, and assuring both himself and the younger wolf that it was indeed authentic, he and Seth phased back. He asked Charlie to bring the imprinted duo to the meeting in 30 minutes. He walked into the council hall and saw his father and Seth's, along with Old Quill and Lucas Yulee, sitting at the front of the room. Sue Clearwater sat next to her husband. The alpha wolf was also an elder. But Sam was with the pack, looking grim. Jake was immediately bombarded by growls, exclamations, and anxious wolves demanding answers. Dude, what the fuck? You reek. Jake, man, where the hell have you been? Jacob Black, where is my brother, you fucking asshole? You said he was safe, but you smell like you bathed in bloodsuckers. What, did you stand by and watch while they took him away again? I thought you were with your precious Bella, Jake. Before anything more could be said, Jake snarled at the pack and shouted, enough. Shut up, all of you. His voice rang with the authority of his alpha ancestors. And the room fell silent. The elders were surprised that Jake was asserting himself, and the pack felt the strength of the command settle on them. I need to tell everyone here what has happened with Bella. And with Seth and our pack. You will be quiet until I am done. Sam walked up to Jake, contempt on his face. You are not alpha, Jacob Black. You are not fit to lead this pack. You chose to save a leech lover, rather than your own pack brother. You will not take my pack from me. Jake stood tall in front of the defiant older wolf. You may challenge me, if you wish, Sam Yulee. But you will not succeed. This pack is mine. You have led well, but it is you who is not fit to guide this pack through the changes that have already begun. Through no fault of your own, you have perpetuated blind intolerance. My birthright brings with it the wisdom of the spirit warriors, since before we became wolves. Did you know that? There is a reason that alpha is passed down through the bloodline. The tradition is practical, so think hard, Sam Yulee. Because if you continue with this challenge, it will end with you submitting before me, bloodied and torn. Sam studied Jake intently, noting the changes that had taken place in him since he had phased, less than 2 weeks ago. Physically, Jake was taller and bulkier than any of the wolves, Sam included. But the physical changes were not what impressed the current alpha. Looking closely, Sam saw the maturity he had disregarded when Jake joined the pack. He could look into Jake's eyes and see the wolf spirit inside the man, and the wisdom of both the wolf's and the man's ancestors. It was intimidating and humbling in equal parts, and Sam knew that Jake was telling the full truth. He would not win a challenge against his rightful pack leader. Stepping back, he struggled with himself before lowering his head and his eyes, acknowledging Jake's words. I don't understand what changes you mean, Jake. But I do see the wisdom of your forefathers in you and your wolf. I will defer to you without a fight. But do not expect me not to question your judgment, if I think it flawed. That is fair, Beta, Jake clapped Sam on the shoulder. But today, as I reveal the changes already upon us, you will maintain your silence. I will not be interrupted. Questions will wait until the end. Sam nodded, and sat down, motioning for the rest of the pack to sit as well. Still silent by the power of their new alpha's order, the pack sat as well. They were stunned by the unexpected transition, although everyone understood that the transfer of power was not complete. Sam would have to submit in his wolf form as well. For now, Jake was met with varying degrees of curiosity and hostility from the pack and the elders. Jake, Sue's Tremule, Au's voice cut through the tension-filled room. Where is Seth? Billy said he was fine, but I don't see him. That is one of the first things we must all discuss. The other thing is Charlie Swan. He will be coming with Seth to this council meeting. He has been told all. Vampires, spirit wolves, the attack on Bella, everything. Lucas Yulee spluttered in outrage. Why has this outsider become privy to tribal secrets? Why was he told without the consent of this council? Why were we not even consulted? I will tell you, Elder, but I did not need your consent for this. There was no other choice. And, as Charlie himself pointed out, he has been best friends with members of this very council for over 30 years. He has proven himself trustworthy. Harry and Billy looked at each other, resigned. They knew that Charlie would be angry with them, and rightly so. He should have been given more than vague warnings when Bella first became involved with the Cullens. Lucas scowled at Jake before motioning him to continue. Jake heard Charlie's cruiser approaching. Quickly, he warned, here comes Charlie with Seth now. None of you will phase. He stared down each wolf, and impressed his words with the weight of his authority. And you will be quiet until I call on you. Turning to the elders, he continued. There is an unexpected development. Seth has imprinted. Her name is Jane. I ask you for patience as we work through this unusual bond. At that, Seth walked in with Jane, followed by Charlie. As one the wolves started to shake, unable to phase, yet clearly wanting to. Leah leapt up to the front of the room, and, snarling, stood protectively in front of her parents. Paul and Jared started forward, growling, intending to take the red-eyed vampire in human form, if necessary. Quill and Embry were watching Seth curiously as he moved in front of Jane, who rolled her eyes behind his back. Sam stared with undisguised scorn at Jake, before his wolf threw off any acceptance given by the man and phased, lunging at Seth and Jane. Jane ducked rapidly under Seth's arm, patting it absently on the way by. She fastened her gaze on Sam, who fell to the ground with a yelp, continuing to writhe in pain. A small smile played at the corners of Jane's mouth, and Jake stared hard at her for a second, taken aback by her obvious ability. Paul, Jared, stand where you are. Leah, there is no danger here, for you especially. Jane, I believe Sam and I have things to work out between us. I would appreciate it if you would stop whatever it is I am certain you are doing. You will all accompany me to the nearby clearing. Where you will phase and Sam and I will settle this alpha challenge once and for all. Then we can resume what should have been a peaceful conversation. Peaceful, Lucas raged. She is a vampire. A cold one. A drinker of human blood. A soulless, monstrous, murdering abomination. How dare you allow her on our land, Jacob Black? Samuel was right. You are not worthy. Silence, Lucas Yulee. Old Quill's voice was powerful. You know that an imprint is a sacred bond, given to us by the spirits. We will settle the matter of the Alpha Challenge, and then we will discuss this rationally. Sue stroked Leah's arm, before she and Harry walked cautiously up to Seth and flung their arms around him. Jane had let up on Sam, who snarled lowly before darting out the back of the hall to the nearby woods. Paul, Jared and Leah glared at the vampire, turning and following Sam to the clearing. Jake asked Quill and Embry to bring his father, before he, too, phased and darted out into the woods. He was met with anger, outrage, and hate from every wolf already there. They were practically rabid in their mindless hostility. He felt Seth, Quill and Embry phase in. Samuel Yulee. Jake's thoughts bellowed, stilling the pack once more. You have challenged me for the right to call yourself alpha of this pack. Yet, look at yourself. No better than a feral dog, egging on your fellow wolves to senseless hate. You are not a leader. Has the spirit of Utlapa finally found a new vessel? Are you an evil man, Sam Yulee, to look upon the outer shell of a being and decide its fate without delving deeper? Jake continued, addressing the entire pack. The Great Spirit has always chosen our imprints. Never before has that been disputed. Never before has the validity of an imprint been questioned. Do you all think that I would bring an enemy into our midst? Do you think that I would not be certain before allowing such a creature onto our land? Am I not a protector? You think me weak or a fool for guarding Bella and allowing Seth to be taken? Have none of you realized that Seth is also a protector? We are spirit warriors, wolves. We are all prepared to face dangers to our people, even at the expense of our own lives. Why should Seth be any less of a warrior? Would you diminish him and minimize his importance to this tribe? Had Bella died that night, because I was saving Seth, our proud warrior brother would have been laid low. Guilt would have scarred his soul. Her death would have scarred this pack, our punishment for failing to protect one in need. The Great Spirit had a hand in the events of that night. Seth has met his imprint, and that is a sacred bond. A worthy bond. None of you will disrespect Seth or Jane, no matter what manner of being she is. Her diet, and whatever else you feel makes her errantly offensive to you will be discussed. But the hate stops now. Samuel Yulee, you will face me, and come away bloodied, as I forewarned you. After this hour you will never again be alpha, nor will you be beta. You have shown yourself to be irrational in your animosity. The rest of you will not interfere. With that Jake and Sam charged one another, beginning a dance that, were they fully wolves, would have ended in death. The guard hairs on Jake's body bristled, and his upper lip curled to reveal glistening teeth, as he met Sam's charge with his own. Sam displayed the same aggression, and the two wolves clashed with vicious snarls. Sam grabbed Jake's shoulder, but the larger wolf rolled, kicking out with his hind legs and twisting as he came back to his feet. In a reversal of position, Jake sank his teeth into the shoulder of the black wolf, and shook him violently. He jerked his head in one swift motion, throwing Sam several feet away. Undaunted, Sam got back to his feet, ears held forward, and bared his teeth once more. Jake raised his tail and, hunching his shoulder blades upward, lowered his head with his ears also forward, he growled menacingly at his adversary. They continued to battle fiercely, although it was obvious to everyone watching that Sam was no match for the rightful alpha. The fight was short, and it was bloody. Sam's initial bite had left a dark stain on the chocolate wolf's fur. But that was the only red that tainted his mouth. Jake had inflicted a lot more damage than he had taken. The black wolf was limping, gashes on his shoulder and legs causing blood to mat his fur. One ear had a ragged tear and he had teeth marks on his snout. Jake had managed more than once to bite down over Sam's muzzle, a show of dominance he hoped would get the former alpha to yield. But Sam proved stubborn. Finally, Jake pinned his opponent to the ground, one paw over his shoulders, and Jake's jaw clamped tightly over the smaller wolf's throat. He held Sam there, just shy of breaking skin, tail up and ears forward, displaying undeniable superiority. A bass growl sounded continuously from Jake's chest, until Sam's tail came up between his legs, and his ears lay flat back against his head. Only then did the pressure loosen. I yield, Sam thought, remaining on his back with his belly exposed. Watching carefully, Jake released him, maintaining his dominant stance. Slowly, Sam rolled over and wiggled on his belly to the rightful alpha. His ears were still laid back and his tail was held low alongside his leg. He whined and cocked his head, glancing at Jake quickly before lowering his eyes again. Jake took Sam's muzzle once more in his mouth, and Sam held still. When the alpha let go, the black wolf licked his pack leader's throat and jowls in apology. Suddenly, every wolf in the pack was there, tails low but wagging, licking and nipping at Jake's blood-stained muzzle. It was an overt show of animal submission for their rightful alpha. All right, you guys, enough. Let's phase back, but same conditions apply. Remain human, respect the imprint, and wait until you're called to speak. There is a lot more to talk about today, and I'm hungry. I'd like to eat sometime tonight. The elders had stayed well back from the battling wolves, and as the young men started to phase back, they moved forward to sit on fallen timber in the clearing. Jane picked up Billy's wheelchair and carried the startled man forward until he sat with the others. Charlie gaped at her and shook his head in wonder. He had not yet witnessed a vampire's strength, and Seth's imprint was tiny, not even 5 feet. Jane ignored the look and sat down away from the humans. She had been interested in the pack fight, but kept having to peer around Seth as he moved in front of her, much to her annoyance. She was tempted to give him a sample of her gift, just to prove she was not helpless, but could not bring herself to do so. That hesitance confounded her, and she started to think further about this connection. This imprint, that everyone, her masters included, was talking about. Now that the issue of the alpha has been settled, we can finally move on to other matters. Billy shifted in his wheelchair, motioning for Jake to come forward. Jacob, would you explain your actions of this day? Begin with the imprinting, as it is at the forefront of everyone's mind, I'm sure. I can't begin with the imprint, Dad. It's pretty much the end of the story. The imprint brings Jane here today, but it is not what brought Seth home safely. I have to start with Bella, and what she and Avenue been talking about for the last few weeks. And so he began to relay the story. He told them about Bella's nightmare, although he did not go into detail, and his insight into the dream from the moment his wolf emerged. He recounted the conversation they had on the beach after the bonfire. Jake described the struggle to control his wolf, and how difficult it had been to vocalize his suspicion that she had 3 vampire mates. And finally, he revealed how his wolf had agreed that they had purpose long before the cold ones appeared on the reservation. He and Bella had theorized that Ephraim knew the same thing, he told the group. And that is why the last pack had made a treaty with the Cullens. The pack was silent still, not having been given permission to speak, but you could see a variety of expressions on their faces, as well as on the faces of the others present. Lucas, Harry and Billy had troubled frowns on their faces. From Paul and Leah there was disbelief and disgust. Jane, Embry and Jared looked thoughtful, Quill, Sue and Charlie interested, and Seth relieved. Sam looked sheepish and humble, eyes on the ground. He was still quite bruised, but he was healing fast. Old Quill merely nodded. There is more to tell. Alpha, as the sun rises in the morning, we will start a spirit journey, seeking the answers we need. But tonight, please finish your tale. I suspect Bella has been united with her mates. And that is why you and Charlie have left her side. Is that also why Seth has returned to us safely? Jake nodded and continued. Yes, Old Quill. Bella's mates are the leaders of the coven that governs the vampire world. They maintain order and secrecy and have done so for a very long time. Seth was taken to them in Italy, with the hope that they would help with her destruction and ours. Instead, Seth met his imprint, and the Vulturi masters found their mate. It appears as though the Great Spirit did indeed safeguard this young wolf. It is imperative that we seek guidance in the morning. Old Quill looked at Jane. Am I correct in assuming that a mating such as your master's is unusual for vampires? Jane nodded crisply. Not just unusual. To my knowledge it is unprecedented. As is this strange attachment Seth has with me. If you want to know more about vampire bonds, you would need to ask Master Marcus. No one has more insight into relationship ties than he does. Not just mating, but all bonds. None of the tribal legends even hint that a wolf would be capable of imprinting on a cold one. Harry put in, the possible significance of this connection causes me great unease. What would be the reason for the spirits to choose a vampire as the soulmate of a protector? Especially a vampire who kills humans without remorse. You know nothing of the way I feed. Jane snapped. Do not make assumptions based on the color of my eyes. For all you know I could be using bagged blood. Are you? Sue asked with wide eyes. Of course not. The anticoagulants are disgusting. I have dined on an animal or two. If there has been nothing else available, but the blood is vile and unsatisfying. My point is you are ignorant children, and have been terrifying yourselves with your legend. Until all you can think about us vampires is that we are mindless animals, without morals or sense. At that Jane crossed her arms, huffing and grumbling incomprehensibly. Seth grinned at her, trying to sidle closer. He saw her eyes flash to him and back again, and then heard her mutter, speaking of mindless animals, but she did not move away. His grin grew wider. Jake cleared his throat. Yes, well, elders, are you finished with your observations for now? I think it is time for the pack to have their say. Surprisingly, most of the pack remained silent. Only Paul opened his mouth. Great, now we have two fucking leech lovers. As soon as the words finished falling from his mouth, he dropped to the floor in agony. Seth wrapped his arms around Jane, fully expecting to be thrown off. Stop, Jane, Paul's just an asshole, who should learn the meaning of respect, Jake said, frowning. Jane gave Paul a cruel little smile and he cried out shrilly before she broke eye contact. She shrugged out of Seth's arms almost as an afterthought. I think it would be well to have the entire pack spirit walk with us in the morning, Jacob. Perhaps they need a reminder of the deference due our ancestors. Perhaps they need to see why we honor them. You have someone guarding our borders right now, I assume. Old Quill's look was shrewd. Billy said our people were protected. Will these vampires watch our land in the morning as well? So we can mend this pack discord? Everyone gaped at Old Quill and Jake. There are vampires running patrols looking for vampires. Snorted Embry, this day just keeps getting weirder and weirder. I can't believe you trust these leeches so much, Jake. This tribe has known the Cullens for decades and we never trusted them this much. Leah was shaking and growling beneath her breath. And doesn't that say a lot about the Cullens? Jake observed. Jane, can you call Felix and Dimitri to meet us here? It shouldn't take long. Less than 10 minutes later, the pack straightened up. As they heard and smelled the vampires coming toward them, Felix and Dimitri entered the clearing somewhat cautiously, yet they looked like they had been having a good time. The two came up to Jane and greeted her. Jane, are you ready to go back to Port Angeles? Jane sighed and shook her head. The masters have instructed me to spend time with Seth. You know how much stock they put in bonds, and this one ties me to the boy. I am here until he is ready to go, or until the masters call me back. A smile played at the corners of Dimitri's mouth. Well, we found no signs of unwanted vampires in the area. From the front of the room, Leah scoffed in an aside to Paul. Wow, they must be really bad searchers, then. Because I am certain I see 3 unwanted vampires right there. She pointed to the 3 guards. Leah, Seth sighed, would you at least try to be nice? Come and meet, Jane, please. For me, Leah looked at her little brother and exhaled. She knew this imprint was not his idea. It seemed her that all imprinting did was cause trouble. She didn't see any good reason for it. Both Sam and Billy's theories seemed like a load of bullshit to her. But she loved Seth, and so she walked over to his small leech imprint. Seth smiled. Jane, this is my sister, Leah. Leah, this is Jane, Felix, and Dimitri. He indicated who was who with a wave of his hand. Leah mumbled hi to Jane, and glanced to meet the claret gazes of the 2 taller vampires. Suddenly her eyes grew wide, and flew from one male to the next. You've got to be fucking kidding me. There is no fucking way. This has to be some fucked up joke the spirits are playing on me. What the fuck? Fucking Italian bloodsuckers. Felix and Dimitri were staring at the she-wolf in awe. At the end of her tirade, Dimitri chuckled. Taking Leah's hand, he pressed a kiss to her knuckles. Actually, my lupa coraggiosa, I am Greek. With a horrified look, she ripped her hand from his, and ran out of the clearing. Blank. When Bella awoke again, night had fallen and she felt much better. Her head was clear, although her body still ached. She felt completely relaxed, until she remembered the accident. Only, a quick vampire hand to her chest stopped her from bolting straight up. Seth. What happened to Seth? Oh my god. Seth is safe, Inamorata. He is with your father and Jake in La Push. My father? She looked at Arrow. What's he doing in La Push? And how come he left me here with you alone? He wouldn't leave me with people he doesn't know. We have spoken with Jake and your father, Amata, Marcus assured her. Your father has been told all. There has been an unusual development, and Jake has taken Seth and your father to La Push to consult the council. What development? Bella wondered what had happened that Jake would want her father along. We will allow Jake to explain when he returns. Arrow heard approaching footsteps, and low voices in the hall. Your doctor is here now. The doctor looked Bella over and declared that she was better than she ought to be, so soon after such an accident. He cast a curious look at the three strange men who had refused to leave the room during her examination. He was certain that he had heard growls as he gently prodded her bumps and bruises. He left off the bandages from her head, and ordered the removal of all the tubes and wires, except the IV. Oh, good, that means I can shower, right? Can a nurse come and help me? From your medical records, it looks as though I don't have to tell you to keep that cast dry, young lady. Ask the nurses when they come in and they will give you a hand. He smiled at her, nodded hesitantly to the men, and left the room. We will help you shower, Kara, Arrow said. Anything you need. Bella blushed, and softly replied, thank you, Arrow. But I really don't want the first time you see me that way to be in a hospital looking like one giant bruise. You are beautiful, Bella. And we are your mates. We will care for you at all times. Leave her be, Arrow. Keyes snarled. You are an innocent, piccola amata, Marcus marveled, observing her blush. Your body has not known the touch of a man. Bella flushed scarlet and nodded. She was profoundly thankful when the nurse chose that moment to bustle in. She unhooked Bella from all the machines, removing everything but the IV, as ordered. When Bella asked for a shower, the nurse opened a CUP board and removed the items needed to cover her cast. Keyes stopped her when a wheelchair was produced, and lifted Bella gently into his arms. Ignoring the protestations of the nurse, he carried his mate into the bathroom and seated her upon a low bench in the open shower. We will be right outside. He brushed her hair back and placed a light kiss on her forehead. Then he retreated to wait with his brothers. When Bella emerged a short time later, she felt much better. Her hair was clean and she didn't smell asphalt and various vehicle fluids every time she breathed in. She squeaked when Keyes once again swept her into his arms. Rather than put her back into bed, he sat in it himself, with his back against the wall, and held her on his lap, urging her head down onto his chest. Bella thanked the nurse, who glared at the three once more before leaving. She felt Marcus and Arrow come to sit on either side of her, and felt hands in her hair, fingers working the tangles out softly. There is no need to be shy with us, Marcus stated affectionately. We are elated that we will be the first and only to show you the delights of our bodies merging together. We will show you such pleasure as you cannot imagine, and gain an equal amount by sharing the experience. We will treasure you always. Arrow leaned into her, pushing his face into her masses of dark hair, and skimming his nose from her ear underneath to her jaw. He inhaled deeply and sighed. Sweet spring violets and frankincense. She smells like our home, brothers. Like the temples in ancient Greece. A gift from the gods, Keyes murmured. He drew her up further on his body, then lifted her chin and lowered his mouth to hers. The kiss was sweet, full of the promise of passion. Bella whimpered softly, and when her lips softened, Keyes ran his tongue teasingly along the seam. Bella inhaled sharply, as a thrill of arousal traveled down her body and settled between her legs. Unconsciously, she moved against Keyes, and he groaned, licking her lips once more. Wide-eyed, Bella pulled back. She stared at Keyes, then Arrow and Marcus, before stuttering, that. I've never been kissed like that before, she finally managed. And a hospital bed isn't really the best place to start all that, her father's voice came from the doorway. Bella looked up to see Charlie, Jake, Seth and Jane all standing in the doorway. Charlie looked as though he were struggling to keep a straight face, Jake and Seth were snickering outright. Jane smiled, seeing her masters happy. You were right, Chief Swan, but who could resist such beauty? Arrow was unembarrassed. He had heard them approaching. We will wait until she is fully recovered to steal more than sweet kisses. Bella's mouth dropped open, a scandalized Arrow falling from her lips. At his questioning glance, she reminded him, that's my father. Who should be pleased to know we intend to treat you well, Arrow responded. Is that not correct, Chief Swan? Yeah, Charlie, aren't you happy to know they're going to wait until she's better before they, Jake coughed, steal more than sweet kisses? Charlie shifted on his feet, mustache twitching, and looked at the floor. Finally, he decided it was best to just avoid the subject. Hey Bella, we stopped by the house and got you some things. Bathroom stuff, mainly. Figured you would want to brush your hair and teeth, at least. I would, Dad, thanks. Where did you guys go? And why do I feel like I'm missing something? Tribal hoopla, bells. The spirits decided that Seth and Jane here were just made for each other, Seth put his arms around the small vampire's shoulders, and she elbowed him in the ribs. Jake laughed and continued, so I crowned myself King Jake. Had to go defend my title and my Packmady's new vamp imprint. I also had to let the elders know that I told your dad everything. I'm still contemplating pushing Billy overboard next time we go fishing, Charlie grumbled. Where are Felix and Dimitri, Jane? I thought Seth would like to stay in La Push. Why are you here and they are not? Seth and Jake burst into laughter, and Jane's mouth quirked up. It seems, Master Arrow, that the Clearwater family has quite an affinity for us bloodsuckers. Leah has imprinted. Marcus's interest was piqued. On whom? Felix, or Dimitri? And is there any indication of a bond from the vampire side? On both, Master. Jane's smile was wide and amused. And if the shell-shocked expressions on their faces were anything to go by, I think that she is their mate. And the she-wolf, is she as entranced by them as young Seth is by you? This time Jane actually giggled. She took it worse than I did, Master. I don't think I've heard someone curse in quite that manner before. And then she ran off. Felix and Dimitri had to chase her. Jan walked up to Arrow and gave him her hand. At least I hadn't yet lifted the order not to phase. She didn't get very far. Jake grinned. Last I saw, Felix had carted her over one shoulder and they were heading somewhere private. With her screeching and beating at his back. Really, it's a good thing no one else could phase. I had just calmed everybody down and that got them all stirred up again. Old Quill, the tribe's shaman, wants to seek the spirits in the morning. He wants the whole pack to go. We were hoping we could borrow a couple of your guards to watch the reservation again. Dimitri says Victoria hasn't left Seattle. But that's still a little too close for my comfort. She's a psychotic bitch. Arrow chuckled as he watched the events playing out in Jane's mind. Have we ever witnessed a mating between more than two in our world? Marcus, aside from the anticipation of ours. When Marcus indicated that they had not, Arrow continued in wonder, and yet here we have two bonds with multiple participants completed in just a few days. And two bonds with shifters. I would be pleased if you would share with me what you learned from your spirits, Jake. You may keep Dimitri and Felix with you tomorrow. I do not think they will want to be far from their mate anyway. I'll see what happens, Arrow. If the spirits answer us, I'm sure it will be an interesting morning. Put me down, you blood-sucking bastard. What the hell is wrong with you? Leah beat her fists against the large vampire's back, and kicked wildly, trying to get him to put her down. Hell, she'd even be okay with him dropping her on her ass. As long the end result was being free of him. Felix, she was sure his name was. Everything her brother had said when he introduced the two males to her was blurred in the blank shock of the imprint. A low rumbling came from Felix's chest. She felt it through her body, but it was most noticeable where he held her tight against his shoulder. Of course, that meant her crotch and lower abdomen were now being stimulated by an oversized vibrator. Leah screeched, outraged, "Stop that fucking rumbling, you dickhead, and put me down." Now, she heard a chuckle from one side of her, and glared at Dimitri. "Tell this thick-headed behemoth to put me down. What the fuck are you grinning at? I have existed for 1,000 years, and today I have finally found my mate. She is no docile female, but a fierce she-wolf warrior. Beautiful and strong. There is every reason for me to be happy." Leah tried to ignore the beat her heart missed, or the flash of pleasure she felt at his words. Instead, she renewed her efforts to be released. The purring hadn't stopped, and she was ashamed to admit she wanted to rub her pelvis harder into the tremors. She squawked in surprise when she found herself on her back, suddenly cradled in Felix's two strong arms, as he continued to run. Without stopping he stared down at her for a moment. Then he ducked his head and gave her a quick kiss. "I felt your body's joy at Dimitri's words, my mate. And smelled your excitement at the purr you inspire in me. We will stop soon, but I do not think I will put you down." Leah's mouth had dropped open at his action, and she flushed beneath her copper skin. Before she could say anything, though, Felix stopped and sat on a large boulder, moving so she sat in front of him, facing forward, with his arms preventing her from leaving. Dimitri kneeled at her feet and took her face in his hands, gazing at her with passionate intensity before crushing his lips to hers. His tongue skimmed her closed lips, and he pulled back with a chuckle at her obstinance. "Very well, mate, we will talk. Felix, let her go." He moved off to one side. The large vampire opened his arms at once, allowing her to leave if that was her wish, but making no effort to move away from her. Leah started to move, before realizing that her wolf was really content right now. And as hard as she tried to summon the caustic, bitter bitch she had become so used to lately, she realized that beneath the shame and anger, She felt more like the girl she used to be than she had since before Sam had left her. She took a look at the place they had stopped. The creek and small waterfall had frozen in the cold of December, and the sculpture of ice was breathtaking. She had always loved winter. Most people thought it was bleak, but to Leah there was beauty in the stark branches of the deciduous trees and bushes. Evergreen needles were still glossy underneath the thin dusting of frost and snow, and the smell in the air was clean and crisp. After a moment, she began, with her back still turned. Why? Leah's distress was evident in her voice, and the carriage of her body. Why do I have to be different? Why can't I just be normal? First, I'm not good enough for Sam, but Emily is. Then I have to be the only female on record to become a shifter. Makes sense that I can't be with Sam now, doesn't it? Shifting took my ability to have kids. I can't carry on the wolf gene. So why should I be blessed with the man I thought I loved? And if that isn't enough, the spirits have chosen me to imprint on leeches. The reason we became what we are. The reason I am this, she gestured to herself. Sterile, bitter bitch, and I don't just get one imprint. Oh no, not me, I get two. Whoop-de-fucking-do. Am I cursed to be constantly chosen for every damn thing that is out of the ordinary? Was I born just to be a freak? She looked at her imprints for answers and stopped, aghast, at what she saw. Felix had stood from his perch, to his full, intimidating height. His eyes were black and he was obviously angry and tense. We are sorry, mate, that we discussed you so much. I certainly would not have chosen for myself someone who would hate me for what I am, without knowing who I am. I admire the fire within you, but I do not want to cause you misery. If this union is so abhorrent to you, I will return to Italy and try to exist without my soul. He turned to leave. Wait, Leah choked. She turned to see if Dimitri was also leaving, and saw him looking at her with understanding and sadness. Wait, Felix, please. Just wait. She couldn't find the words to tell him how awful it felt to see him so hurt. She couldn't swallow over the lump in her throat. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she stumbled over to him, reaching as high as she could to hug him to her. She felt his arms pick her up as he sat with her in his lap. She crawled as close to him as she could, sobbing her apology. Dimitri laid a cool hand on the nape of her neck. It's all right, Leah. You have kept yourself angry to protect yourself from the anguish you have felt for so long. You are a unique individual, and that is not an easy thing to be sometimes. But you have been made specifically for us. You were born to be with us. It does not mean you are out of the ordinary, or a freak. It means you a strong, passionate woman, with the fortitude to handle us both. We are not normal men, Leah. We would not have an ordinary mate. You are extraordinary, and stunning, Felix added, tilting her face up with a finger beneath her chin. He looked deeply into her eyes, and gorgeous, he kissed her lips. And strong, he kissed her again, and tightened his hold, and so fucking sexy. His mouth descended once more, and he brushed the corner of her mouth, dragging his lips across her jaw. He nipped at her earlobe, and whispered heatedly, "Do not make me feel that way again, Leah. I could not handle it. My soul is in your care, do not crush it." She pulled her head away from him, gripping his biceps. Her hand did not reach even halfway around his massive arm. Holding his gaze, she softly assured him, "I will take care, Felix. I am sorry. I felt how hurt you were when I saw your face. I can't pretend to like the circumstances of this imprint, but I'll get to know you." She looked at Dimitri over her shoulder, eyes watering again. "I'm sorry, Dimitri. I promise I'll try not to be such a bitch." He caught her mouth in a brief, torrid kiss, before he looked at her. "You can be any way you want to be, Leah, as long as you are ours. We like your fierce spirit, my warrior wolf," Felix added, "just don't deny that we are your mates. Do not attempt to send us away now, for we will not go." Leah nodded, and fell silent, wrapped around Felix. Dimitri sat beside them and stroked her back rhythmically. She felt the breaths passing in and out of her lungs smoothly, and reveled in a feeling of peace and security. Several minutes later, she once again felt vibrations coming from Felix's chest. She looked up at him curiously, and then at Dimitri when she heard a similar noise from him. "Did you say you guys purr, Felix?" He agreed, "and our mate seems to enjoy it." He inhaled deeply. "I think the or other things we can do that our mate will enjoy, while we have this time to ourselves." Before Leah could fully register the meaning of his words, she felt Dimitri trailing wet open-mouth kisses along the column of her neck. She moaned, and arched back, knowing her mates would keep her steady. Felix held her under her arms alongside her breasts, and skimmed his thumbs over her nipples, causing them to pucker in response. So sexy, Leah, my mate, our mate, look at you, moaning and shivering at our touch. You are a goddess. Felix teased her peaks once more, and his eyes blackened at her response. Dmitri pulled away and swept off his cloak. He motioned for Felix to remove his, and then laid them both on the ground where the moss grew thick and spongy. The large vampire stood and placed Leah on her feet, steadying her when she swayed. He ran his hands down the sides of her body, gathering the fabric of her dress, and drawing up and over her head. He tossed it away, and stepped back. Leah felt at once awkward and incredibly alluring, standing naked in front of the two vampires. Their black-eyed gazes raked her body, lingering on her breasts with their tightened peaks, and the neat, trimmed mound at the apex of her thighs. Without knowing how she got there, she found herself laying on the cloaks, with Dmitri hovering above her. She welcomed the touch of his tongue at her lips this time, sighing and parting them softly. He groaned, and ran his tongue along the inside of her top lip, before retreating once more. His hand came up to caress the side of one breast, and his mouth lowered to the other. She whimpered as he rolled her nipple between his lips, and pushed her breasts up, begging without words for him to touch her more. Dmitri moved off her without releasing her nipple, and she was momentarily confused before she felt a second set of cold lips at her other breast. Felix was rougher, pulling her nipple up between his lips and swirling his tongue around it. Leah gasped, arching up. A hand dipped down to her mons and stroked her lightly, circling her clit with frustrating softness. She opened her legs and pushed up into the hand, trying to find more friction. Dmitri chuckled where he still toyed with her breast, and she snarled at him. Damn it, Dmitri, quit teasing me, touch me, already, I want your fingers on my clit, in me, all around me. I want you both, fuck, she finished, as she felt what she had been demanding. Dmitri pushed 2 fingers into her wetness, gliding them in and out rapidly. In another lightning-fast move, she felt his mouth on her pussy, sucking, nibbling, tasting her. Oh gods, I have never felt anything so soft and warm. His tongue vibrated over her clit, and Felix replaced his mouth at her breast with his hands, pulling and plucking her nipples. Kneading her breasts, she felt his mouth at the crease of her shoulder and neck, kissing it quickly, before he sucked hard. Ah, Leah cried out. She was a mass of sensation. Oh fuck, yeah, that's right. Oh spirits, I want to come. She grabbed the large vampire's hair and pulled him to her mouth. She didn't think about anything but the climax fast approaching, as she pulled his tongue in to dance with hers. She sucked on his bottom lip and then bit, scratching her nails down his arm. He growled lowly and rolled her nipples again, just as Dmitri growled into her core, and curled his fingers inside her. Leah came with a wail, arching her back up off the ground, throwing her head back and shaking, as her inner muscles clenched and fluttered around Dmitri's fingers, soaking them in her juices. He curled his fingers, again and again, driving her higher, until she felt lightheaded and saw spots in her vision. When she finally came down, her mates were laying on either side of her, purring once more, and stroking her sides gently. Didn't you guys want anything? She asked. They both shook their heads. What we want from you would take longer than the time we have here, Leah. Dmitri said with a wicked grin. Watching you come apart like that was the most beautiful thing I've seen in all my years, Felix added, as Dmitri agreed. It will certainly be difficult to keep my hands off of you. But the first time I have you completely, the first time we both have you, will not be on the forest floor. With that, they wrapped her in their cloaks, and held her as she slipped into a sated, peaceful sleep. Video ends here. Be hydrated, take care of yourself, have a good day.